Chapter 725.
He could vaguely see that it was a woman.
Yi Xian stared at the woman, and the image became clearer. At that moment, the ball of flame suddenly shook violently and exploded. Countless sparks flew everywhere. Everyone in the hall was stunned. Yi Xian looked at the Master of Black-Yellow.
What's going on?
The Master of Black-Yellow looked at the four black-robed men.
One of the black-robed men said, "Your Majesty, we can't spy on that area."
The Master of Black-Yellow frowned. "What do you mean?" The black-robed man said, "That person might be in a special area, and we can't spy on that area." Yi Xian looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know where she is?" Yi Xian shook his head.
"I don't know."
The Master of Black-Yellow was silent for a moment, then looked at the black-robed man.
"Is there any other way?"
The black-robed man shook his head. "That star sector is too far away from us, and its location is special. We can't spy on it."
They couldn't spy on it.
Yi Xian was silent. The Master of Black-Yellow was silent for a moment, then looked at Yi Xian. "Do you have any other ideas?" Yi Xian shook his head.
"No."
The Master of Black-Yellow waved his hand gently.
"You may leave."
The four black-robed men and Old Yang left quietly. Only Yi Xian and the Master of Black-Yellow were left in the hall. The Master of Black-Yellow looked at Yi Xian. "What do you plan to do next?" Yi Xian asked, "Why doesn't the temple make a move now?" The Master of Black-Yellow said, "According to my guess, it should be because they are afraid." Yi Xian frowned.
"Afraid?"
The Master of Black-Yellow nodded.
"They are afraid of you and that Tao sect."
Yi Xian asked, "Are they enemies?" The Master of Black-Yellow nodded.
"They should be.
However, I can't be sure." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. "You have been in contact with the Tao sect.
How is it?"
Yi Xian said, "It's very mysterious, and they seem to be hiding from something." The Master of Mysterious Yellow said softly, "They must be hiding from this temple. It seems like there is something fishy going on between these two forces. You can make contact with them and try to rope them in." Yi Xian nodded.
"Of course."
As he spoke, he looked at the Lord of Black-Yellow. "What's with your attitude?" Until now, he still did not know what the mysterious Yellow Master's attitude was. It should be said that the other party's attitude was a little vague. The mysterious Yellow Master smiled and said, "Monarch Yezi, your question hurts my heart. From the beginning until now, I have helped Monarch Yezi a lot." Yi Xian smiled. "Understood. Anyway, thanks a lot. I'll have to trouble the mysterious Yellow Lord to investigate the matter regarding the Divine Hall." The Master of Mysterious Yellow nodded. "You have to be careful. It's fine if the deities don't make a move. Once they do, I'm afraid they will destroy the world." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Understood. Take care." After saying that, he turned and left. After Yi Xian left, Elder Yang appeared behind the Master of Mysterious Yellow and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, I'm afraid the Divine Hall has already made us enemies." The Master of Mysterious Yellow smiled and said, "They want to get something, but they don't want to give anything. How can there be such a good thing in this world?" Elder Yang said, "So, Your Majesty has chosen this Monarch Yezi?" The Master of Mysterious Yellow said softly, "I can only choose him. Because the Divine Hall is powerful, if we choose them, they will not value us, nor will they talk about benefits with us. In their hearts, we should submit to them and follow their orders. So, we can only choose Yi Xian." Elder Yang nodded. "Understood." The Master of Mysterious Yellow said, "Now, let's see if the woman in the plain dress behind Monarch Yezi is strong enough. If she can't suppress the Divine Hall, we will all die." The woman in the plain dress. Everyone in the Black-Yellow Great World knew that there was someone behind Yi Xian, and it was this woman in the plain dress. As for what level this woman in the plain dress was, no one knew. After Yi Xian left the Black-Yellow Great World, he went to the Tao sect. However, when he arrived at the underground city, the city was already empty. There was not a single person. Yi Xian said softly, "It can't be." After a while, Yi Xian shook his head, turned around and left. Needless to say, the Tao sect had slipped away when they saw that things were not going well. Now, he could only rely on himself for everything. When Yi Xian returned to the northern region, he was alone in the hall. Yi Xian took out the executing heaven sword, which was now covered with cracks that looked like a spider web. Yi Xian gently stroked the executing heaven sword, and countless sword will surged into the executing heaven sword. After being strengthened by the sword will, the cracks on the executing heaven sword began to gradually repair.
Looking at the executing heaven sword in his hand, Yi Xian's eyes had a trace of apology in them.
"I'm sorry." The executing heaven sword trembled slightly and let out a sword cry. Yi Xian said softly, "Actually, my strength is not worthy of you at all." Was the executing heaven sword strong?
It was definitely very, very strong. It could be said that up until now, he had not unleashed the true power of the executing heaven sword.
It was not that the executing heaven sword was not good, but that his personal strength was too weak. The executing heaven sword suddenly turned into a sword light that circled around Yi Xian's body, as if it was expressing something. After a while, Yi Xian laughed and grabbed the executing heaven sword. The sword trembled, and a sword light flashed across the sword's body. Yi Xian put away the executing heaven sword and sat cross-legged on the ground. In his mind, a scene quietly appeared. A sword. A pitch-black sword. That sword was floating somewhere. After a while, Yi Xian retracted his thoughts. The white-robed woman told him to find that sword and then let him fuse 4 swords into one. He now had 3 swords. At the top of the pagoda, the white-robed woman's sword, Xueqi's sword, and if he found that black sword, he would have 4 swords. 4 swords into one. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian took out a God-state sword and began to devour it. Raise the realm first.
He was now in the Dao realm, and the Dao realm was divided into the beginning Dao realm, knowing Dao realm, proving Dao realm, mastering Dao realm, Tendo realm, and then Emperor realm. Above Emperor realm was God state, then End realm, and finally half-step Ascension realm and Ascension realm. In other words, he was still quite a distance away from Ascension realm. Fortunately, his physical body was at the peak of the End realm, so his physical body realm was not bad. Yi Xian began to devour the swords. As the swords were devoured, the aura around him became stronger and stronger. News of the battle on Cliff Mountain quickly spread throughout the black-yellow great world. Yi Xian. These 2 words once again appeared in everyone's ears. Now, Yi Xian was known as the #1 genius of the black-yellow great world, and he was also the #1 swordsman genius. Most importantly, Yi Xian had a backer. Now, many large forces in the black-yellow great world were secretly investigating whether their ancestors had any relationship with Yi Xian. In the main hall, Yi Xian's aura became stronger and stronger. During this time, he had already devoured 3 swords. Jian Zizai was also in the main hall. She sized up Yi Xian but did not say anything. A moment later, Jian Zizai suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in the prison pagoda. Jian Zizai went directly to the 6th floor. With a wave of her right hand, the door to the 6th floor was opened, and Jian Zizai walked in. In a corner of the 6th floor, there was a person sitting there. When she saw this person, Jian Zizai's eyes narrowed. How is this possible? A quarter of an hour later, Jian Zizai left the 6th floor. At this time in the 1st floor, Yi Xian suddenly stood up, and a powerful aura swept out from his body. Jian Zizai appeared in front of Yi Xian. "You know the realm?" Yi Xian nodded. Jian Zizai nodded slightly. "Right now, your state of mind and body can keep up. All you need is a process. This process can't be rushed, but it can't be too slow either. Your current strength is linked to your realm. If your realm can't keep up, your strength will be greatly reduced." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid that choosing to cultivate in adversity was a wrong decision." Jian Zizai shook her head. "You're wrong. The reason you can fight above your realm is largely because you cultivate in adversity. Your realm is low now. If you reach the Ascending Seal realm, your strength will definitely far surpass other Ascending Seal realm experts. No, it should be crushing. Few people in the same realm can compare to you." Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. "What you need now is time." "Time?" Yi Xian nodded. "I hope I still have time. Sister Jian, I'm going to find that sword. I'll leave Tianjiang City to you." Jian Zizai nodded. "I'll guard here for you. If anything happens, you can contact me directly." Yi Xian smiled. "Thank you." Jian Zizai looked at Yi Xian. "Be careful." Yi Xian nodded. I will. After talking with Jian Zizai for an hour, Yi Xian left the hall. Looking at the distant sky, Yi Xian was silent for a moment before quietly disappearing. He left Tianjiang City quietly. It was best to keep a low profile. He was a little worried about Tianjiang City. He was different from before. He was not alone. If he couldn't win, he could run. Now, he had to fight even if he couldn't win. Because behind him was Tianjiang City. These people from the chaotic universe who followed him here. Fortunately, Tianjiang City had Jian Zizai to suppress them. Unless the temple attacked, there shouldn't be a problem. After a while, Yi Xian came to a vast starry sky. He rode his sword towards the depths of the starry sky. His target was Black Sword. He didn't know the exact whereabouts of Black Sword. He only knew the approximate location of Dao Yi. Therefore, he couldn't guarantee that he would find Black Sword. However, he had no other choice. He couldn't contact the woman in the plain dress. Now, he could only find Black Sword and combine the 4 swords. He didn't know what would happen when the 4 swords were combined. About an hour later, Yi Xian entered a starry sky. In front of him, there was a huge black hole hundreds of thousands of miles away. Yi Xian frowned. The devouring power of the black hole was too strong. He didn't dare to get too close. The position given by the woman in the white robe was right in front of him. Inside the black hole? Yi Xian was a little worried. The devouring power of the black hole was too strong. He wasn't sure if his body could withstand it. After a moment, Yi Xian's figure trembled and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of thousands of feet away. Yi Xian was getting closer and closer to the black hole. At this moment, his body felt like it was being torn apart. Yi Xian didn't stop. He continued forward. The further he went, the stronger the tearing feeling in his body became. Yi Xian stopped. His face darkened. If he kept going forward, he would die. At this moment, Yi Xian seemed to feel it. His expression changed drastically. P.S. Yesterday, I received news in my circle of friends. An author died of a heart attack in the middle of the night. He only found out 10 days later. Maybe many readers have already seen this news. Actually, I suddenly realized that many men, used to exchange their lives for money when they were young. I hope everyone cherishes their health. Your health is the most important thing. Chapter 726. Yi Xian turned around and saw a figure in black armor standing not too far away from him. He held a spear in his hand, and he seemed completely devoid of aura like a ghost. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. The divine hall? The figure in black armor didn't speak, and he just vanished abruptly. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he drew his sword and slashed. Bang! As soon as his sword descended, Yi Xian instantly retreated explosively by over 100 m. However, the spear in the figure's hand had shattered into pieces. Yi Xian glanced at his trembling arm, and his expression gradually became solemn. His opponent's strength isn't ordinary. Meanwhile, the figure in black armor suddenly vanished. Bang! A powerful force swept towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian was holding the executing heaven's sword with both hands. When the man in black was about 10 feet away from him, he held the sword with both hands and slashed forward. Bang! With a slash of the sword, the black-armored man was instantly sent flying. However, Yi Xian himself also retreated rapidly. The figure in black armor was just about to attack again when a voice suddenly resounded. Stop! As soon as this voice resounded, a beautiful red-clothed woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. She seemed to be around 30 years old, and her figure was voluptuous like a ripe peach. It was extremely alluring. She gazed at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian was about to speak when she suddenly said, You're Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, You know me? She spoke indifferently. King Yi, my Jiang clan doesn't seem to have any enmity with you, right? The Jiang clan? Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly because he hadn't heard of the Jiang clan. She glanced at Yi Xian. King Yi, we don't want to get involved in the matter between you and the Divine Hall. Yi Xian nodded. I'm only here for one thing. The beautiful woman looked at Yi Xian. What is it? Yi Xian pointed in the direction of the black hole not far away. The Jiang clan is over there? The beautiful woman didn't say anything. Yi Xian thought for a moment, Then he pointed with his finger, and an illusory sword appeared in front of the beautiful woman. This sword was the black sword that the white-robed woman had asked him to find. Seeing this sword, the beautiful woman's eyes narrowed. "You're here for this sword?" Yi Xian nodded. "Judging from your expression, you should know the whereabouts of this sword?" The beautiful woman looked at Yi Xian. "This sword is my Jiang clan's treasure." The Jiang clan. Yi Xian was silent. This was going to be a little difficult to deal with. He didn't expect that the sword actually had an owner. The beautiful woman said indifferently, "Young Master Yi, please return." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "Can you lend me that sword?" The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian. "King Yi, are you joking?" Yi Xian spoke with a serious expression. "Just for a moment." The beautiful woman's face remained expressionless. "No." Yi Xian fell silent. The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian. "King Yi, we don't want to enter into conflict with you. This sword belongs to my Jiang clan, so we'll absolutely not allow it to fall into the hands of an outsider." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He naturally wouldn't seize it by force. It was best if he didn't make enemies right now. Moreover, the Jiang clan wasn't an ordinary power, so he would definitely be unable to defeat it by himself. Of course, he wouldn't give up just like that. That black sword was the key. The beautiful woman heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Yi Xian leave. After all, even the Jiang clan was extremely fearful of Yi Xian. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded. "King Yi, please wait." Yi Xian stopped moving, and then he turned around to gaze at the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman's brows knit together tightly, and a short moment passed before she gazed at Yi Xian. "The patriarch invites you over." "The patriarch invites you over." Yi Xian nodded. "Please lead the way." The beautiful woman glanced at Yi Xian, and then she turned around and left with the black armored figure. The two of them headed towards the depths of the black hole while Yi Xian followed closely behind them. The closer they got to the black hole, the stronger the devouring energy became. At this moment, his body had started to crack apart. However, the two people before him weren't affected at all. Yi Xian walked swiftly over to the beautiful woman, and he was just about to speak when the beautiful woman suddenly said, "I've heard of King Ye's peerless strength. I presume that this little bit of devouring energy shouldn't affect King Ye at all, right?" Yi Xian was speechless. The beautiful woman glanced at Yi Xian. "King Yi actually used his body to resist this devouring energy. I truly admire you." Yi Xian spoke indifferently. "There's no enmity between us, so why are you targeting me like this?" The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to be so direct. Yi Xian continued, "If I've offended you in any way, then please speak clearly. It's all my, Yi Xian's, fault, and I'll definitely apologize. If not, then please don't target me. Otherwise, I have a bad temper, and I'm afraid I might do something bad." Right at this moment, the black armored figure by the beautiful woman's side suddenly gazed at Yi Xian, and then a powerful aura smashed down towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he drew his sword and slashed. Hiss! A ray of sword light slashed down, and the black armored figure was instantly sent flying hundreds of feet away. As soon as he stopped, the black armor he wore shattered. The black armored figure was about to attack again, but the executing heaven sword in Yi Xian's hand was already pressed against his forehead. Yi Xian's expression was ice cold. "I didn't kill you before, but that doesn't mean I can't kill you. I'm just giving face to the Jiang clan, understand?" The black armored figure glared at Yi Xian, and he clenched his fists tightly. Clearly, he wasn't convinced. Yi Xian ignored the black armored figure, and with a wave of his right hand, the executing heaven sword returned to his hand. At this moment, the black armored figure suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. Seeing this, the beautiful woman's expression changed drastically, and she hurriedly said, "King Yi, please don't." Hiss! Before she could finish speaking, the black armored figure's head was sent flying. The beautiful woman was stunned. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to directly kill him. Yi Xian's face was emotionless, and the executing heaven sword in his hand was trembling slightly. The beautiful woman gazed at Yi Xian and spoke angrily, "King Yi, this is the Jiang." Yi Xian suddenly gazed at her. His expression was calm, but his gaze was like a sword that caused others to shudder with fear. The beautiful woman was shocked. At this moment, she suddenly recalled what sort of person she was facing. After all, he was in existence who could kill Ascension Realm experts. Suddenly, a voice resounded. "Greetings, King Yi." The beautiful woman bowed slightly towards the distance, and then she tapped with her finger. A pitch-black stone descended in front of Yi Xian. This is a black origin stone. It can resist the devouring force of a black hole. Yi Xian put the black origin stone away, and then he walked towards the black hole. It didn't take long for him to vanish within it. The beautiful woman gazed at the corpse in front of her, and no one knew what she was thinking. There was a completely different world on the other side of the black hole. Yi Xian teleported through the black hole and arrived in a valley. There was a blue sky and white clouds above him, and he was surrounded by the sounds of birds and the fragrance of flowers. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman appeared in front of him, and she said, "King Yi, come with me." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. Yi Xian followed her, and it didn't take long for them to arrive before a pavilion. The pavilion was built halfway up the mountain, and there was a statue of a man floating before it. Yi Xian glanced at the statue and asked, "Is this the ancestor of your Zhang clan?" The beautiful woman nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian sized up the statue. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman spoke abruptly, "The ancestor of my Zhang clan probably doesn't know King Yi." Yi Xian was speechless. The two of them walked around the statue and arrived at a wooden hall. There were two old men and a middle-aged man within the hall. The middle-aged man was the patriarch of the Zhang clan, Zhang Mufeng. Zhang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "King Yi is really awe-inspiring to kill people the moment he arrived in my Zhang clan." Yi Xian said, "First, he attacked me as soon as I arrived, and he wanted to kill me. Second, I gave him a chance to live, but he didn't cherish it and still attacked." Zhang Mufeng said calmly, "But King Yi could have shown mercy and done me a favor." Yi Xian looked at Zhang Mufeng and said, "Respect is mutual. If your clan respected me from the beginning, why would I need to use my sword?" Zhang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "There should be a reason why Patriarch Zhang asked me to come, right?" Zhang Mufeng waved his right hand, and the two old men and the beautiful woman beside him bowed slightly before retreating. There were only two people left in the hall. Zhang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "I heard that King Yi has a fifth-dimensional treasure." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Does your Zhang clan also want it?" Zhang Mufeng shook his head and said, "How can my Zhang clan possess such a treasure?" As he spoke, he walked in front of Yi Xian and said, "King Yi, how about we make a deal?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Tell me about it." Zhang Mufeng said, "My Zhang clan will lend you the sword, but in return, I want to see the fifth-dimensional treasure on you. How about it?" Yi Xian looked at Zhang Mufeng and said, "Just to take a look?" Zhang Mufeng nodded and said, "Just to take a look." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Why not?" As he spoke, he opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. When he saw the prison pagoda, Zhang Mufeng's expression turned serious. He opened his palm and Yi Xian smiled and said, "Where's the sword?" Zhang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "Why? Are you afraid that I will go back on my word?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Take the sword." Zhang Mufeng glanced at Yi Xian and opened his palm. A black box appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked at the black box. Zhang Mufeng pointed at it and the box opened. Inside the box was a sword. It was the sword that the white-robed woman had asked him to find. Yi Xian retracted his gaze and looked at Zhang Mufeng. He released his hand and the prison pagoda flew into Zhang Mufeng's hand. Zhang Mufeng looked at the prison pagoda in his hand and a fiery look flashed in his eyes. Fifth-dimensional treasure, as he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and said, "Rumor has it that this item can allow people to go to the legendary fifth dimension. Is that true?" Yi Xian spread his hand and said, "Sword." The box in Zhang Mufeng's hand suddenly disappeared. He smiled and said, "What sword?" Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and said, "Why? Do you want to play dirty?" Zhang Mufeng smiled and said, "Yi Xian, you have killed my clansman. I have not settled this matter with you. However, for the sake of this fifth-dimensional treasure, I can let bygones be bygones." Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Are you trying to rob me?" Zhang Mufeng looked at Yi Xian and said, "This treasure was given to me by you." Chapter 727. Yi Xian smiled. He hadn't expected that the Zhang clan would actually play tricks on him. Right at this moment, an old man appeared behind Yi Xian. The old man wore a loose robe, and his hands were hidden within his sleeves. There was a small red word inscribed on his chest. God. The Divine Hall. Yi Xian smiled. I was wondering why. So you're colluding with the Divine Hall. Zhang Mufeng spoke indifferently. King Yi, only death awaits those who go against the Divine Hall. If King Yi chooses to surrender. Yi Xian spoke abruptly. We're all adults, so can you not speak so stupidly? Zhang Mufeng gazed at Yi Xian. Then please take care of yourself, King Yi. As soon as he finished speaking, he left silently. Yi Xian didn't stop him. The reason he was wasting his breath on Zhang Mufeng was because he wanted Zhang Mufeng to escape with the pagoda. Yi Xian turned around to look at the old man. The old man's aura was restrained, and Yi Xian couldn't see through him. However, he was absolutely not weaker than the old man in white. The old man gazed at Yi Xian. Attack! His voice was very calm, but it carried a strand of formidable confidence. Yi Xian nodded. A moment later, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and transformed into a ray of light that flew forward. The infinite sword. Yi Xian naturally didn't dare underestimate an expert of such a level, and he immediately executed the infinite sword. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this attack, and a trace of seriousness appeared in his eyes. He took a small step back, pressed his palms together, and then pressed them forward lightly. Bang! Yi Xian's ray of light was blocked, but the old man was pushed back repeatedly, and he moved over 1 kilometer back. When he finally stopped, Yi Xian was gone. The old man frowned slightly. He closed his eyes and swept the area with his divine sense. In an instant, he'd scanned the entire area. However, Yi Xian had vanished without a trace. The old man's frown deepened as he scanned his surroundings once more. However, he did not discover anything. How is this possible? A trace of doubt flashed through the old man's eyes. He didn't believe it and scanned the area again, but he still couldn't find Yi Xian. It was as if Yi Xian had vanished into thin air. A moment later, the old man looked at his hands. His palms had been chopped off by Yi Xian's sword. What a powerful sword technique. The old man looked around, and his eyes became more and more solemn. If Yi Xian was a little stronger, that sword would have taken his life. He couldn't be allowed to stay. The old man's expression gradually turned cold. After a short moment, as if he had thought of something, the old man turned around. In the next moment, he had already arrived at the top of a mountain, and Zhang Mufeng was nearby. At this moment, Zhang Mufeng's face was lifeless, as if something had happened. The old man walked in front of Zhang Mufeng. Where's the fifth-dimensional treasure? Zhang Mufeng was dumbfounded. Then he said, Honorable Envoy Yuan, the fifth-dimensional treasure has disappeared. It's gone. Honorable Envoy Yuan looked at Zhang Mufeng. What kind of tricks are you playing? Zhang Mufeng said in a deep voice. Honorable Envoy Yuan, just now after I obtained the treasure, I was prepared to hand it over to you after you dealt with Yi Xian. However, I didn't expect that the treasure would suddenly fly away by itself. Honorable Envoy Yuan stared at Zhang Mufeng. Do you think this old man is an idiot? Zhang Mufeng hurriedly said. Honorable Envoy Yuan, I didn't lie to you. The treasure really flew away by itself. At this moment, Honorable Envoy Yuan suddenly slapped out with his palm. Bang! Caught off guard, Yuan Mufeng was sent flying. Before he could stop, a hand directly grabbed his throat. Zhang Mufeng's expression changed greatly. Honorable Envoy Yuan, you. Honorable Envoy Yuan's right hand immediately swelled up. Yi Xian was expressionless. Because of me? If it weren't for your Zhang clan patriarch being too greedy, would you have ended up like this? Moreover, even if you hate someone, you should hate the shrine. Why hate me? Moreover, even if you hate someone, you should hate the shrine. Why hate me? I wasn't the one who killed your Zhang clan's people. The beautiful woman stared at Yi Xian, not saying anything. Yi Xian said, Where is the sword? The beautiful woman did not say anything. Yi Xian said, I will ask for the last time. Where is the sword? As he spoke, he walked in front of the beautiful woman. Your Zhang clan schemed against me.
I have yet to settle this matter with you.
The beautiful woman said sullenly. It has already been taken away by that honorable envoy Yuan.
Taken away? Yi Xian frowned. Taken away by the shrine? This is going to be troublesome. The beautiful woman looked at Yi Xian.
If you want the sword, go look for the shrine.
Yi Xian did not bother speaking nonsense with this woman. He turned around and disappeared. After leaving the Jiang clan in the starry sky, Yi Xian raised his head and looked up. The Sky Dome Realm. This shrine was in the Sky Dome Realm. Given his current strength, he could not risk going to the Sky Dome Realm. If he could not go to the Sky Dome Realm, that sword, where he stood, Yi Xian frowned deeply. He was put in a difficult position. Just at this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Soon, a voice came from in front of him. It was Yan Jia's voice. After a while, Yi Xian turned his head and looked to the right.
The 6th floor's Dao Law?
After a moment of silence, Yi Xian disappeared. Yan Jia sent a message. He had found the 6th floor's Dao Law and wanted Xiao Chen to make a trip there personally. The 6th floor's Dao Law. Soon, Yi Xian disappeared into the distant starry sky. After Yi Xian disappeared, a man appeared.
This man wore white robes and held a book in his hand.
He wore a scarf on his head and looked like a scholar. The scholar looked into the distance and smiled gently. Interesting. At this moment, an old man appeared beside him.
This person was that honorable envoy Yuan. The scholar smiled and said, Honorable envoy Yuan, the faction behind this person is not simple.
Since you have chosen to become enemies with him, why not kill him directly? Honorable envoy Yuan shook his head. Killing him is easy, but getting rid of the people behind him is difficult. The plain-dressed woman? The scholar looked at Honorable Envoy Yuan. Has Xiao Gujin not found out the origins of that plain-dressed woman? Honorable Envoy Yuan shook his head. He is just a little bit off. As for that woman, we have no idea how strong she is or where she is from. The scholar asked softly, What realm is she at? Honorable Envoy Yuan replied sullenly, At least the unknown realm. Or maybe even higher. Or even higher. The scholar frowned slightly. Apart from my deity hall and Taoist sect, there is really someone who has reached the unknown realm? Honorable Envoy Yuan nodded. This woman's strength is not simple. Furthermore, this Yi Xian is acquainted with the ancestors of those factions. This is extremely strange. Even now, we still do not know the background of him and that plain-dressed woman.
The scholar suddenly said, Do you know the location of that plain-dressed woman?
Honorable Envoy Yuan replied in a low voice. We do not know her current location. However, she once appeared in an unknown starry sky, and she is extremely far away from us.
The scholar suddenly said, I will go meet her.
Honorable Envoy Yuan looked at the scholar, and the scholar smiled lightly. I will naturally know her true strength after fighting her. Wait for my news. As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of white light and vanished into the distance. P.S. I have to go out today, so I will update early. Thank you to all the friends who have been rewarding and subscribing recently. Thank you for everyone's support. I will send a red packet for everyone to draw. Thank you. Chapter 728. A battle with a plain-dressed woman. Envoy Yuan fell silent as he watched the scholar disappear into the distance.
As the scholar had said, there was only one way to know the true strength of the plain-dressed woman, and that was to let their people fight her. Only by fighting with a plain-dressed woman would he be able to know her true strength. They did not have the nerve to attack Yi Xian until they knew how strong the woman in the plain dress was. Yi Xian was not scary, but the plain-dressed woman was. The temple had been treating an expert of this level seriously from the beginning. Otherwise, they would not have been hiding in the dark. This time, they had asked the Shenyuan family and the other experts to join forces to deal with Yi Xian because they wanted to use them to see the true strength of the plain-dressed woman. Unfortunately, the plain-dressed woman did not appear. Moreover, she had called out 3 enemies. The Shenyuan family, the Wu clan, the Sword Martial sect, and the former Immortal Sword sect were all on Yi Xian's side. The situation was not particularly good for the temple. Of course it was not too bad. The plain-dressed woman was the key. If the plain-dressed woman was weak, Yi Xian and the others would not be able to withstand a single blow. Simply put, as long as the plain-dressed woman was dealt with, Yi Xian and the others would not be a problem. This time, the scholar wanted to see what level the plain-dressed woman had reached. After a moment of silence, Envoy Yuan turned and left. Bound of Universe. Inside the palace, the Lord of Universe sat cross-legged on the ground with her hands on her knees. Her eyes were slightly closed as if she was meditating. At this moment, Elder Yang walked into the palace. Elder Yang did not disturb the Lord of Universe. He stood aside. After about an hour, the Lord of Universe opened her eyes. An aura spread out from her body, but it quickly disappeared. The Lord of Universe looked at Elder Yang. "Speak." Elder Yang said in a deep voice. Monarch Yi went to the Jiang clan, and then the top experts of the Jiang clan were all slaughtered. The Lord of Universe asked, "Did he do it?" Elder Yang shook his head. "The temple did it." The Lord of Universe said softly, "It seems that the temple is really going to come out." Elder Yang nodded. "The temple has been quite active recently." The Master of Black Yellow nodded slightly. "Where's King Yi?" Elder Yang said. "He went south. Their goal is unknown." "South." The Lord of Mysterious Yellow frowned slightly. After a moment she said, "Continue investigating." Elder Yang nodded. He hesitated for a moment as if he wanted to say something. The Master of Mysterious Yellow asked, "Why?" Old Yang said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty, the strength of this deity temple, I'm afraid it's far beyond our expectations. If you are careless, you will be consigned to eternal damnation." The Mysterious Yellow Master laughed and said, "Are you trying to say that our investment in Yi Xian is destined to fail?" Old Yang was silent. The Master of Black Yellow said softly, "Do you know why Yi Xian is still alive?" Elder Yang looked at the Lord of Black Yellow. "Your Majesty, please speak your mind." The Master of Mysterious Yellow laughed. "The fact that he is still alive means that the temple is afraid of him. The stronger the deity's Templar is, the stronger the person they fear is." Old Yang nodded. "That woman in the plain dress." The Master of Black Yellow narrowed her eyes. "She is stronger than we thought." As she spoke, she stood up and walked to the entrance of the hall. She said softly, "Now that the strength of the Shenyuan family and the other families has been damaged, only the temple and that door are left. As long as these two forces disappear, the bound of universe can regain its former glory." Old Yang said in a deep voice, "Then Yi Xian," the Master of Black Yellow said, "he has no desire for power." Old Yang nodded. "I understand. Green City, Yi family, Ancestral Temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang." The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi family. "Why?" At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral temple. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the entrance. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her two little hands were tightly gripping the corners of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was a trace of timidity in her eyes. The little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral temple and said timidly, "Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral temple. Once again she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The Great Elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi family rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered. Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince.
What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap.
A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You are very good. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince.
I will not hesitate to die 10,000 times.
Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back.
Understood?
Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, Your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, Prince, save me! Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Ching ching! Yi Clan. Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince." Impudent! The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger, and before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Chapter 729. A backer. Yi Xian felt that having a backer wasn't something to be ashamed of. Of course, he wouldn't feel proud either. Because in the end, one had to rely on oneself. But sometimes, it was still okay to hide the tiger skin. The woman looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. The plain-dressed woman. Just this person alone could solve all the problems she mentioned. Actually, in the current 4th dimension, only the few Dao laws and the prison pagoda knew how terrifying the plain-dressed woman was. Because they were the only ones who had fought with her. She was so powerful that she could cause others to feel despair. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss, I'm also slightly surprised that this pagoda chose me. But since it chose me and recognized me as its master, then I won't run away. In any case, I can't run away. I'll say it again, if you help me, I'll restore your freedom in the name of the pagoda master." The woman looked at Yi Xian. "If you really control this pagoda and all the Tao laws within it, you won't restore our freedom." Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Miss Yan Jia believes in me. Ah, you believes in me?" The woman fell silent. Yi Xian didn't speak as well. He picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup. As soon as the tea entered the cup, a refreshing smell instantly assailed his nostrils. The woman suddenly said, "Let's enter the pagoda and take a look." Yi Xian nodded. The two of them entered the prison pagoda. At this moment, Xiao Ling appeared in front of Yi Xian and the woman. Xiao Ling glanced at the woman and was slightly on guard. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Why didn't you plant a spirit tree?" Xiao Ling waved her hand and a huge alchemy furnace appeared in front of Yi Xian. Within the alchemy furnace, a raging fire was burning. Alchemy furnace? Yi Xian was stunned and asked, "You're refining pills?" Xiao Ling quickly nodded and took out an ancient book. Yi Xian glanced at it and saw 3 large words on it. Alchemy scripture. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Linger. "Where did you get it?" Xiao Linger blinked and didn't say anything. Yi Xian asked seriously, "Where did you get it from?" Xiao Linger grinned and pointed upwards. Yi Xian asked, "The 6th floor." Xiao Linger shook his head. Yi Xian's expression changed. "The 8th floor." Xiao Linger nodded. "The 8th floor." Yi Xian broke out in a cold sweat. The 8th floor is awake?" Xiao Linger nodded and took out an ancient book. On the cover of the book were 2 large black words. Poison Scripture. The Book of Poison. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. He looked at the woman beside him and asked, "Is the 8th floor a medicine master?" The woman shook her head. "He is 100,000 times more terrifying than apothecary." Then, she looked at Xiao Linger. "Can you get in touch with her?" Xiao Linger blinked and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was speechless. This little girl must have done something bad again. At this moment the woman suddenly said, "Let's go to the 6th floor." Then, she and Yi Xian disappeared on the spot. On the 1st floor, Xiao Linger began to prepare her elixirs. She read a book and placed some ingredients in it. Soon, the alchemy furnace began to boil. At the entrance of the 6th floor, the woman led Yi Xian inside. At this moment, an invisible force suddenly blocked Yi Xian's path. Yi Xian was taken aback and said, "Senior." There was no response. The woman suddenly said, "Wait here." Then she walked in. The woman looked at the corner of the wall in silence. At this moment, a voice sounded. "I didn't expect to see an old friend again." The woman said softly, "With your strength, you shouldn't be like this." The demon lord smiled and said, "If you want to get something, you have to pay a price." The woman looked at the corner. "Why?" The demon lord asked, "Have you ever loved someone?" The woman was expressionless. "I am a Tao Law." The demon lord smiled and said, "All things have spirits. Although you are a Tao Law, how are you different from humans?" The woman was silent. The demon lord said softly, "I have observed that little guy. He is a good person. You can trust him." The woman said softly, "People change." The demon lord smiled and said, "You can live your life as you please now, but have you ever thought about it? This pagoda is rapidly recovering with him. If its intelligence completely recovers, how are you going to fight it then?" The woman shook her head. "He can't fight against it." The demon lord said, "But he is the one with the most hope. Moreover, he can't fight against it alone, but he can call for help. Why did this pagoda choose a weak person like him? Isn't it because he wants to suck up to that plain-dressed woman?" Plain-dressed woman. The woman was silent. That woman could indeed crush this broken pagoda to death. It should be said that this broken pagoda didn't dare to show any temper in front of that woman. The demon lord said again, "What are you thinking about? You don't have any other choice now, right?" The woman looked at the demon lord. "You don't hate me?" The demon lord laughed. Why should I hate you? If I want to hate, I only hate myself for not being strong enough. If I had the strength of that plain-dressed woman and the others, why would I be suppressed here? The woman was silent for a moment. Then she said, "What plans do you have for the future?" The demon lord said softly, "What other plans can I have?" The woman looked in front of the demon lord and said softly, "The word love is harmful." With that, she turned and left. At the door, Yi Xian hurriedly looked at the woman. "Senior." The woman said softly, "Let's go." Yi Xian looked inside. "Senior Demon Lord. You are awake?" The Demon Lord smiled. "I am awake." Yi Xian grinned. "Senior, can you leave the mountain?" The Demon Lord laughed. "Kid, do you want to learn a very powerful fiend technique?" "Very powerful." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "What fiend technique?" The Demon Lord said, "I'll look for you in 2 hours." Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. "All right." Yi Xian and the woman returned to the first level. Yi Xian looked at the woman. "Senior," the woman suddenly said, "Lian Qian, that's my name." Yi Xian nodded. "Miss Lian Qian, have you thought it through?" Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian. "According to what I know, you have already grasped the major Dao Law, Space Dao Law, and Dream Dao Law. In addition to Yu and Yan Jia, you have a total of 5 Dao Laws." Yi Xian nodded. Lian Qian said, 5 Dao Laws. If you include me and this Xiao Ta's current condition, you can activate 2 functions of this pagoda. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What 2 functions?" Lian Qian said, "First, in the name of the pagoda, it can imprison all things in the world. This pagoda has an imprisonment technique. In theory, as long as you are chosen, you will be imprisoned. Moreover, this imprisonment technique contains the laws of the 5th dimension. You people from the 4th dimension can't break it." Speaking of this, she seemed to have thought of something and added, "Except for a few people." At this moment, she recalled the scene in the starry sky back then. This pagoda had used this technique on the 3 swordsmen. Unfortunately, their heads had exploded. Yi Xian said, "I've used this technique before. However, every time I use this technique against a powerful enemy, my body would be hollowed out." Lian Qian said, "That's normal because you're too weak. Moreover, you didn't use the right method." Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian. "The right method?" Lian Qian flicked her finger and a white light entered between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Soon, a string of information appeared in Yi Xian's mind. It was a mnemonic chant. Lian Qian said, "This is the mnemonic chant for the imprisonment technique. With your current strength and this pagoda's willingness to help you, there's no one you can't imprison unless it's a top powerhouse." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "This top powerhouse. Can you be more specific? For example, what level of powerhouse can I imprison now?" Lian Qian shook her head. "I don't know. In any case, you'll know when you encounter a strong enemy." Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian continued, "However, this imprisonment technique consumes a lot of energy. You have to take it easy." Yi Xian nodded. "Understood. Miss Lian Qian, what is this second function you mentioned?" Lian Qian said softly, "Come with me." Saying that, she led Yi Xian out of the pagoda. Outside the pagoda, she looked at the top of the pagoda door. There were 2 pairs of couplets. On the left side, "Imprison the heavens, imprison the earth, imprison all gods and demons." On the right side, "Imprison the Tao, imprison life, imprison all human immortals." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "This is." Lian Qian said, "Do you know what this is?" Yi Xian shook his head. Lian Qian said softly, "This is the 6 Paths Mantra, Master's Mantra." Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian. "Master's Mantra?" Lian Qian nodded. "These 6 Paths Mantra. You can use the first 2 now." Yi Xian looked at the 2 pairs of couplets. "How do I use them?" Lian Qian suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She pointed a finger at the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! A powerful force suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. Countless information suddenly surged into Yi Xian's mind. Just like that, about half an hour later, Lian Qian withdrew her hand. Lian Qian looked at Yi Xian. This Master's Six Paths mantra can be said to be the pinnacle of the heaven and earth laws of your four-dimensional universe. Once you use these Six Paths mantra, you will definitely be targeted by your four-dimensional universe's Tendo. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "How many Tendo are there in the four-dimensional universe?" Lian Qian said softly, "Many. However, the strongest should be the one from your black-yellow great world. I've felt it before. The other party is unfathomable. It's definitely not something you can contend against." Yi Xian nodded. Then, he looked at the Six Paths mantra. Prison heaven. Prison earth. He could use these two mantras now. Lian Qian had already taught him how to use them. Yi Xian said, "Can I try?" Lian Qian shook her head. "It's best not to. Only use it when you're undefeatable." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." Saying this, he looked at Lian Qian. "Miss Lian, what Dao Law are you?" Lian Qian said, "I'm not something you can control right now." Yi Xian was speechless. Lian Qian said, "The current you must quickly increase your realm. Once your realm increases, coupled with the fact that you've recultivated in adversity, your strength will be much stronger than you can imagine." Yi Xian nodded. "I will try my best to increase my realm." Lian Qian nodded slightly. "Go to the 6th floor. He doesn't have much time left." Time. Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian in shock. Doesn't have much time left? What does that mean? P.S. Someone asked me how many words this book will have. How many do you think this book will have? How many do you hope to write? I will listen to your opinions seriously. Chapter 730. Lian Qian said lightly, "Let's go and see." Yi Xian did not ask anything and went directly to the entrance of the 6th floor. "Come in." A voice suddenly sounded from the 6th floor. Yi Xian walked in. The space on the 6th floor was not big, but there were some mysterious black runes on the surrounding walls. These runes were connected from end to end, and they were densely packed together. Moreover, they were exuding a strange and mysterious power. Yi Xian looked at a corner not far away. When he saw the Demon Lord, he was stunned. The Demon Lord had a head full of white hair. Not only that, his entire face was covered with wrinkles, and he looked incomparably old. Not only that, the Demon Lord's aura was extremely weak, so weak that it was almost non-existent. This was completely different from the portrait he saw in the Demon Gate. And in front of the Demon Lord, there was an ice coffin. In the coffin, there was a woman lying. The Demon Lord suddenly laughed and said, "Haha, is it different from what you imagined?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, the Demon Lord said softly, "come and have a chat." Yi Xian walked in front of the Demon Lord and looked at the old Demon Lord in front of him. For a moment, his emotions were incomparably complicated. The Demon Lord smiled slightly. "I'm sorry, it's not that I don't want to help, but that I am powerless." Yi Xian asked, "Is it because of this tower?" The Demon Lord shook his head. "Not really." Yi Xian looked at the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord looked at the ice coffin in front of him and said softly, "Do you remember the story of me and a woman that I told you before?" Yi Xian nodded. "I remember." The Demon Lord smiled and said, "She is that woman." Yi Xian looked at the woman in the ice coffin in front of him. The woman's appearance could not be said to be very beautiful, but it was not bad either. The Demon Lord smiled and said, "Back then, I was just a scholar. For me, my biggest wish was to enter the imperial examinations. Unfortunately, my family was poor, and I could not even afford to eat, let alone study." At this point, he looked at the ice coffin in front of him and said softly, "She and I can be said to be childhood sweethearts. At that time, due to my family's circumstances, her parents did not approve of our relationship. However, that did not stop us. In order to pay for my education, she worked several jobs a day. For a whole 5 years, she never spent a single copper coin on herself." At this point, the Demon Lord seemed to have thought of something. Tears suddenly flowed from his eyes. "That day, I went to the capital to take the exam. I told her that when I passed the exam, I would marry her. She smiled and didn't say anything." The Demon Lord gently stroked the ice coffin in front of him and said softly, 3 months later, I won the top rank, but when I returned, she was already dead." "Dead?" Yi Xian was stunned. "Why?" The Demon Lord laughed out loud. laughing a little crazily. This matter is as melodramatic as what is written in chivalrous novels. After I left, her parents forced her to marry someone else. She refused, so her parents forced her. In the end, she chose to commit suicide. At this point, he looked at the ice coffin in front of him with an incomparably painful expression. It was me who harmed you. What did I do for you to do this for me? What did I do to deserve this? Yi Xian was silent. His emotions were complicated. The demon lord suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Do you know what is the most painful thing for a man in this world? It is meeting the right person when you have no ability, and what is more painful is that when you have the ability, that person is no longer there. Yi Xian was silent. Although he did not have the same experience as the demon lord, he could understand what he was saying. If a man met the right person when he had no ability, how helpless would he be? However, if that person was no longer around when he had the ability to do so. At this time the demon lord said softly, "She is no longer there. Even if I am a first-rank official, what is the point?" At that moment, my life's beliefs collapsed. In the end, I chose to abandon the arts and go to the military. Fortunately, I was quite lucky and obtained some opportunities. And for the rest of my life, I wandered around with her. Later, I heard that entering the fifth dimension can reverse life and death. Thus, I searched everywhere for a way to enter the fifth dimension. Finally, I found this tower. Unfortunately, I underestimated the strength of this tower. Hearing this, Yi Xian finally understood why the demon lord was imprisoned. So he found this world prison tower himself. Yi Xian asked, "Senior, according to reason with your strength, this kind of situation should not have happened." The demon lord said softly, "That year, I used some methods to ask someone to gather her soul and spirit. With this soul and spirit, there is a possibility of her resurrection. After I was imprisoned in this tower, I could barely resist the power of this tower, but she could not. Thus, all these years, I have been using my own strength to protect her. But the result is that I have overused my strength, and my lifespan has been consumed too quickly." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. "If I had met you earlier, perhaps this would not have happened." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I remember that the plain-dressed woman was in this tower. Why didn't Senior ask her for help?" The demon lord shook his head and smiled. "Little brat, you are so smart, why can't you understand now?" Yi Xian looked at the demon lord. "Senior, what do you mean?" The demon lord smiled. "You think the plain-dressed woman is easy to talk to?" Yi Xian nodded. "She is easy to talk to." The demon lord shook his head. "Only to you. In her eyes, except for you, everyone else is an ant." "No, except for you, there is no one else in her eyes." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "She is very strong, so strong that even I do not know how strong she is. I do not know why she cares so much about you, but there must be a reason. You have to live on for your sister, for your other lovers, and for her. Otherwise, if you die here, with that woman's strength and temper, I am afraid she will destroy the entire fourth dimension." The plain-dressed woman. As he said this, the demon lord's eyes became very serious. In the past, he was also a person at the peak, but after meeting the plain-dressed woman, he realized how weak he was. Weak. In front of the plain-dressed woman, this was the first time he felt so weak. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, I will definitely live well. But for now, let's not talk about me. Follow me out of the tower." Wait. The demon lord shook his head. "It's too late." Yi Xian looked at the demon lord. The demon lord said softly, "My lifespan has come to an end. Even if the plain-dressed woman is here, it will be useless. After all, even she cannot reverse life and death. Life and death cannot be reversed." As he said this, he looked at the ice coffin in front of him. "I asked you to come here because I need your help with something." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Senior, please speak." The devil lord said softly, "I can no longer continue to protect her, let alone resurrect her. You, on the other hand, are the person most likely to go to the fifth dimension. If she follows you, she will most likely be resurrected." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "Take her to the fifth dimension. If the fifth dimension can resurrect her, please do so. However, don't tell her about me." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" The demon lord smiled and said, "It's good that she's alive." Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Senior, even if you resurrect her, you're no longer here. The demon lord said softly. When she was with me, she lived a hard life. Those days were really too hard. She has never been happy in her life. I want her to live a good life. Live a happy life. Yi Xian wanted to say something but hesitated. The demonic lord laughed. I know what you want to say. If she reincarnates, she might have a good life. However, she can no longer reincarnate. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? The demon lord said softly, her obsession is too deep. At that time, it was because of her obsession that I protected her soul and spirit at all costs. As he spoke, he paused for a moment before continuing. You are the person most likely to enter the fifth dimension. With her by your side, there is a high chance of her resurrection in the future. If you can resurrect her, don't tell her about me. Because I am no longer the scholar from back then. Yi Xian was silent for a moment before saying, if I go to the fifth dimension in the future, I will do my best to help Senior fulfill this wish. The demon lord laughed. That's enough. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a black key appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was puzzled. Senior, this is? The demon lord said softly. Do you still remember the tomb I asked you to bring out from the demon sect? Yi Xian nodded. The demon lord looked at Yi Xian. Inside is my last inheritance. Apart from that, there is something else I left for you. As he spoke, he suddenly stood up and walked in front of Yi Xian. One last thing for me. Yi Xian asked. Senior, speak. The demon lord looked at Yi Xian. After I leave, use the secret technique in the tomb to refine my body into a demon corpse. My body has already broken through this world. If it is refined into a demon corpse, Yi Xian suddenly said. Senior, the demon lord interrupted Yi Xian. Let me finish. If my body is refined into a demon corpse, it will surpass the so-called ascending seal realm experts. It should be at the unknown realm. Apart from that, as long as you continue to cultivate according to the secret technique, my demon corpse. No, it should be an emperor corpse, the emperor of corpses. It is the highest level demon corpse in the demon race. As long as you continue to cultivate the secret technique, my emperor corpse can continue to cultivate and become stronger. As he spoke, he suddenly pressed his right hand on Yi Xian's shoulder. I am not doing this for you. If you resurrect her in the future, just let this demon corpse follow her secretly. When I was alive, I wanted to protect her. I hope that after I die, I can protect her. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, the demon lord shook his head. I don't have time. As he spoke, he glanced at the woman in the coffin and smiled faintly. This farewell is eternal. If you resurrect, you must live well for yourself. You must. As he spoke, he turned to look at Yi Xian. I will do one last thing for you. As he spoke, his soul suddenly flew out of his body. In the next moment, his soul left the world prison pagoda and soared into the clouds. Sky Dome Realm, in front of the heavenly gate of the temple, a white-robed scholar's soul looked at the heavenly gate and smiled faintly. I am Xueqi. I request a battle. Chapter 731. In front of the sky gate, the scholar stood quietly, his back ramrod straight and a smile on his face. He was very refined and quiet. Below, Yi Xian looked up at the sky. No one would have thought that the scholar before him was a great demon. A very, very big demon. How strong was the demon lord? He didn't know. But he knew that he wasn't weak. So far, the demon lord was probably the strongest person he had ever seen, aside from the master of the three swords at the top of the pagoda. Yi Xian looked up at the sky. Although the demon lord was now in soul form and very weak, he shouldn't be weak. At this moment, a white-robed old man suddenly appeared in front of the sky gate. The white-robed old man had a head full of white hair like snowflakes. With one hand behind his back, he looked at the scholar quietly. You are not from the black-yellow great world. The scholar smiled. Why do you say so? The white-robed old man was expressionless. The temple knows all those who have surpassed the unknown realm in the black-yellow great world. The scholar laughed. I am indeed not from the black-yellow great world. The white-robed old man glanced at Yi Xian below and said softly, I have to say, he is so mysterious that even the temple is shocked. First, the sword martial school's founder and others. And now you. If I'm not mistaken, Your Excellency must have reached the legendary life realm. The scholar nodded. Yes. The white-robed old man stared at the scholar. Why is such an amazing person unknown? The scholar smiled. The world is big, and the black-yellow great world isn't the only one. The white-robed old man nodded. That's true. The scholar said, I don't like to talk nonsense, but for some reason, I still want to say something. The white-robed old man said softly, The strong deserve respect. Speak. The scholar smiled. Give me a friendly suggestion. Don't target the little guy below. The white-robed old man glanced at Yi Xian below and said, Why? The scholar smiled. You can't afford to offend the person behind him. The white-robed old man looked at the scholar. Since the temple was born, there has never been anyone we can't afford to offend. There used to be, but they have all turned to dust. The scholar nodded. Then I won't say more. Fight with you? The white-robed old man made an inviting gesture. Please enter the heavenly gate. The scholar laughed and disappeared on the spot. The white-clothed old man vanished as well. Down below, Yi Xian quietly looked at the position of the gate of heaven. This continued for about a quarter of an hour before a voice suddenly rang out in Yi Xian's mind. Hurry up and find the woman in the plain dress. The voice of the demon lord. A woman in a plain dress. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression was incomparably solemn. At this moment, he finally understood that the demon lord had used his soul body to search for the temple to help him see the true strength of the temple. And just now, the demon lord had asked him to quickly find the woman in the plain dress. What did this mean? This meant that the strength of this temple was far beyond the demon lord's expectations. Things were very serious. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the gate of heaven. In front of the gate of heaven, the old man in white appeared once again. He glanced at Yi Xian and said, Let us see how powerful your backer is. With that, he turned around and disappeared. Down below, Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, Lian Qian walked to Yi Xian's side. What's wrong? Yi Xian said softly, The strength of this temple is a little beyond my expectations. Lian Qian looked at the horizon. This mysterious yellow great world is not simple. In the past, the people here have been peeping into the fifth dimension. Although no one has ever entered the fifth dimension, this is enough to prove that this place is not simple. Qing, Yi family, ancestral temple. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth. The youth had a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral temple. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the family wanted to dismiss Yi Xian, she ignored her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral temple and said timidly, Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent! The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly. Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the title of crown prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap was heard. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard quickly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. "Subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I'm willing to risk my life for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian ignored Zhang Mu. Walking up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Ching ching! Yi Clan. Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the ancestral hall and asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, My brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent! The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly. Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered. Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. This subordinate, Zhang Mu, greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed and quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger, and before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, Your man? As he spoke, he stomped down on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me! Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Chapter 732. In the boundless starry sky, the scholar flew through the sky. In next to no time, the scholar frowned slightly because he felt that something was off. This starry sky was too quiet. This was an unknown starry sky that was too far away from the black-yellow Great World. Along the way, he had used various teleportation arrays in the Xuanhuan Great World and various teleportation treasures to reach his current position. At this moment, he felt uneasy. The four-dimensional universe didn't just consist of the Xuanhuan Great World. It was huge. Even the Xuanhuan Great World didn't dare say that it controlled the entire four-dimensional universe. This universe was infinitely vast. In some unknown star fields, there might be some super almighty. Even the temple didn't dare say that it could completely dominate the entire four-dimensional universe. Especially the recent appearance of the plain-dressed woman and the person who was waiting for him. These told him that there were still powerhouses in some places in the four-dimensional universe. The scholar scanned the surroundings and secretly put up his guard. The scholar continued forward. The deeper he went into the starry sky, the more uneasy he felt. About an hour later, the scholar suddenly stopped. In front of him, thousands of zhang away, there was a man's corpse floating. The man's corpse floated in the air. His eyes were wide open, still filled with disbelief. In addition, there was a small sword hole between his eyebrows. The scholar took a step forward. The next moment, he was in front of the man. Looking at the man, the scholar frowned. At this moment, a soul suddenly flew out of the man's body. This soul was extremely illusory and was about to disappear completely. The man looked at the scholar. Half-step unknown? The scholar cupped his fists. You are? The man asked. And who are you? The scholar said softly. The temple. The man narrowed his eyes. The temple? The temple in the black-yellow great world? The scholar nodded. Yes. The man looked behind the scholar. The black-yellow great world is very far from here. Why does the temple want to extend its reach here? The scholar shook his head. I'm here to find one person. The man frowned. Find someone? Who? The scholar said. A woman in a plain dress. Hearing this, the man's eyelids twitched. You're looking for her? The scholar stared at the man. You've seen her? The man asked. Why are you looking for her? The scholar said. This person is an enemy of my temple. Becoming enemies with the temple. The man's expression immediately became a little strange. The scholar asked calmly. Where is she? The man pointed behind him. He went over there. The scholar glanced at the man. Who killed you? The man shook his head. It has nothing to do with you. May I ask, is she an enemy of your temple? The scholar nodded. The man smiled and said, Good luck. The scholar asked solemnly, What realm is she at? The man thought for a moment and said, It should be unknown. Both of you still have the strength to fight him. However, the outcome of the battle will depend on both of you. The scholar glanced at the man and didn't say anything. He quickly disappeared into the distance. In the same place, the man suddenly shook his head and smiled. The Temple of Light, a bunch of idiots. As soon as he finished speaking, his soul quickly turned illusory. The man looked at the end of the starry sky. At this moment, a scene appeared in his mind. It's A. In the morning, he met the woman in the plain dress in this starry sky. The two of them should have brushed past each other and should not have had any interaction. On that day, when he saw the woman in the plain dress, he was shocked. So, he went forward to stop the woman in the plain dress. At first, the woman in the plain dress looked at him and didn't say anything. Her expression was very calm, but her eyes were slightly cold. He didn't care. He could feel that the woman in the plain dress was not so simple. However, he was confident that there were very few people in this world that could pose a threat to him. So, he started to talk to the woman in the plain dress. Before he could finish speaking, the woman in the plain dress suddenly attacked with her sword. Just one attack. He didn't even see how the woman in the plain dress attacked with her sword. When the woman in the plain dress finished attacking with her sword, she had already disappeared into the distant starry sky. As for him, the vitality in his body quickly went to zero. Not only that, even his soul was starting to die. At that moment, he was completely petrified. He never thought that he would be killed in an instant. That was an instant kill. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. At that moment, he truly understood what it meant by there is always a mountain higher than a mountain, and there is always a person better than you. He was a little unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. That was a woman as powerful as a god. When he heard that the Temple of Gods was going to cause trouble for her, he laughed. He laughed happily. He wasn't the only one who felt stupid. There were many others. Soon, the man completely disappeared into the starry sky. This was an unknown expert. It had to be said that he was very, very strong. However, he met someone he shouldn't have met. At the end of the distant starry sky, the scholar continued to move forward. He knew that the woman in the plain dress was definitely extremely powerful. However, Not only did he not have the slightest intention of retreating, but his fighting spirit grew stronger.
The heart of an expert. A true expert would never be afraid of an enemy who was strong. On the contrary, they were afraid of an enemy who was weak. The scholar suddenly smiled. I hope you won't disappoint me.
As soon as he finished speaking, he laughed and increased his speed.
Soon, he completely disappeared into the distant starry sky. Prison Pagoda. Yi Xian sat quietly.
The aura around him had gradually calmed down. At that moment, he had completely absorbed the demon god's heart. Not only that, he had now reached the mastery realm. The mastery realm. After devouring the demon god's heart, he directly rose 3 levels.
This was too crazy. Even Yi Xian himself found it unbelievable.
This time, he had advanced without the devouring sword. Could it be that he could advance without the devouring sword in the future?
Yi Xian did not think too much about it.
Now that he had reached the mastery realm, his godly soul and mind energy had improved by a lot. If the current him were to use the immeasurable sword, he would definitely be able to kill a powerhouse in the Ascension realm.
As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly smiled bitterly. Before this, his strongest enemy was a Feng realm expert.
But now that he had the strength to kill a Feng realm expert, his current enemy had changed.
Temple.
He still didn't know how strong this temple was. Although he could kill a Feng realm expert now, the enemy he had to face was no longer a Feng realm expert.
A moment later, Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at his body.
At that moment, the demon god's heart had completely disappeared. The demon god's heart had completely vanished. His heart was still his own heart, but after this heart absorbed the demon god's heart, a change had occurred. His heart had become even stronger. Apart from that, his body was also trained by the demon god's blood. Although his body didn't improve, it was much stronger than before. His body had reached the peak of End Realm, but it was still tough for him to reach Feng Realm. No matter what, he had gained a huge amount this time. Not only did he reach the Mastery Realm, but his body was also strengthened. Now, along with the immeasurable sword and the executing heaven sword, it shouldn't be hard for him to kill a Feng Realm expert. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and looked at the Demon Lord's corpse not far away. Looking at the Demon Lord's corpse, Yi Xian was in deep thought. Emperor Corpse. This was the highest level demon corpse in the demon path. With the Demon Lord's strength, once his body was refined into an Emperor Corpse, he would be comparable to an unknown realm expert. But from a personal point of view, he didn't want to refine the Demon Lord's corpse into an Emperor Corpse. Just at this moment, Lian Qian and Yan Jia suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Lian Qian said softly, "Respect his choice." Yan Jia nodded his head. "This is his last wish, help him complete it." Yi Xian looked at the two of them. "Seniors, tell me, can one really revive people in the 5th dimension?" The two of them were silent. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Or is this a scam?" Lian Qian shook her head. "It isn't a complete scam." Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian and she said softly, "In the 5th dimension, there is a legend that the eternal life sword can reshape the soul and body. It can also cut off the cause of the past and the karma of the future. It is said that this sword can revive the dead. However, whether or not it is true, I don't know. Apart from the eternal life sword, there is another person." Yi Xian asked right away. "Who?" Lian Qian said softly, "Master." "Master." Yi Xian said solemnly, "The master of the prison tower?" Lian Qian nodded her head. "If there is someone in the world who can revive the dead, then it is Master." Yan Jia nodded his head. "It is indeed possible, Master." Yi Xian looked at the two of them. "What about your master? Such a powerful person shouldn't have died, right?" Lian Qian shook her head. "He didn't die, but we don't know where he went." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Lian Qian suddenly said, "There is absolutely no one in the 4th dimension who can truly bring the dead back to life. Even someone as strong as that woman in a plain dress can't do it. Of course, she can kill whoever she wants, but she can't bring a dead person back to life. Therefore, only by entering the 5th dimension can we revive the woman in the coffin. Because she still has one soul and one spirit, the chances are very high." He paused for a moment, then continued, "Moreover, with your current condition, you must go to the 5th dimension." Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded his head. "I understand." After saying that, he started to refine the Demon Lord's corpse. The Demon Lord had already passed on some of the Demon Lord's important mental cultivation methods and secret techniques to him. Therefore, he only needed to do as he was told. Lian Qian and Yan Jia didn't disturb Yi Xian. The two of them left. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. After about 3 days, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in the tomb. This aura became stronger and stronger. After about 2 hours, boom! A powerful pressure suddenly appeared in the prison tower. In an instant, the entire prison tower shook violently. Chapter 733. An Emperor's Corpse. Within the tomb, the Demon Lord's corpse stood silently in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, the Demon Lord's corpse was surrounded by a black stream of air, and the aura it emanated was extremely powerful. Unknown realm. This Emperor's corpse was at least in the unknown realm. Looking at the Emperor's corpse, Yi Xian was silent for a long time. In the end, he bowed slightly.
I will remember Senior's request.
With that, he turned and left the tomb. He did not take the Emperor's corpse out of the tomb because the tomb contained extremely pure spirit qi that could nourish the Demon Lord's body. On the 6th floor, Yi Xian walked up to the ice coffin. He gazed at the ice coffin for a very, very long time, and then he sighed in a low voice. After that, he was about to leave the prison pagoda. However, right at this moment, an explosion suddenly resounded from the 2nd floor below. Yi Xian was shocked and hurriedly appeared on the 2nd floor. As soon as he reached the 2nd floor, a thick cloud of smoke assaulted his face. Yi Xian waved his right hand and directly dispersed the thick smoke. After the smoke dispersed, in front of him, fragments of the alchemy furnace were scattered all over the ground. Lil Linger was sitting in front of the alchemy furnace. Her entire little face was black and swarthy, as if it had been dyed with black mud.
Xiao Linger wiped her face and looked somewhat dispirited.
Yi Xian walked over to Xiao Linger and asked, "What are you doing?" Xiao Linger glanced at Yi Xian and said with some lack of confidence, Refining pills. Refining pills." Yi Xian looked around.
Then he said, "Did you fail?"
Xiao Linger nodded. Yi Xian sat in front of Xiao Linger and said with a smile, "You only failed once. Don't be afraid, take your time." Xiao Linger looked at Yi Xian and said, "Aren't you going to scold me?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "It's not like you're doing something bad." Hearing this, Xiao Linger jumped up and said excitedly, "You want me to refine pills?" Yi Xian smiled. "Of course it's not a bad thing, is it?" Xiao Linger quickly nodded.
"It's not a bad thing."
Yi Xian gently rubbed Xiao Linger's little head. "But you have to be careful. Don't do anything too dangerous. Furthermore, if you have any problems, you must not act recklessly. You must ask me or Sister Yanjia and the others, understand?"
He discovered that Lil Linger was young but full of mischief.
Simply suppressing her would not work. The more he prevented her from doing it, the more she would do it. Furthermore, she would do it sneakily. Thus, he decided that it was better to stop her than to stop her. He would use the method of guiding her. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Xiao Linger quickly nodded. "All right." Yi Xian smiled and said, "If you don't understand anything about alchemy, you can ask the new sister Lian Qian. She should know a lot." Xiao Linger blinked. "Will she tell me?"
Yi Xian sternly said, "She will."
Xiao Linger grinned. "I will go now."
With that, she turned and ran away.
Yi Xian was stunned. Then he shook his head and smiled. After a while, Yi Xian came to the entrance of the pagoda. Looking at the 6 paths of truth, he was silent. How strong were the 6 paths of truth? He was not sure, because Lian Qian did not allow him to test it. But according to his guess, it should not be weak. After all, it was left by the pagoda master. After a while, Yi Xian turned and left. Outside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian did not return to the north immediately. He wanted to accompany Yi Ling. The green grassland stretched as far as the eye could see. Yi Xian held Yi Ling's little hand. The two siblings walked slowly. Behind them was a flock of sheep. These sheep were raised by Lian Qian. "Brother."
Yi Ling suddenly looked at Yi Xian.
"In the future, let's find a place like this to live, okay?" Yi Xian smiled. "You like it here?" Yi Ling nodded. I like it. There is no fighting here. There is no killing. Yi Xian looked around. He had to admit that this place was really good, especially for him. Over the years, he had been wandering between killing and being killed. He rarely had this kind of satisfaction. He was a little tired of killing. But he was very clear that he had to continue killing. Only the strong had the right to choose what kind of life to live. The weak had no choice. Many people said that it was good to live an ordinary life. In fact, the so-called ordinary life was an excuse for him because he could only live an ordinary life. Without reaching the peak, what right did he have to call himself ordinary? On the grassland, the brother and sister walked slowly. Along the way, the brother and sister chatted and laughed. At this moment, the brother and sister were very happy. Brother, how many sisters-in-law will I have in the future? Why do you ask? Brother, look, there is Sister N and Sister Lien. There are also a few big sisters in the pagoda, and Sister Xiao Jiu. Don't you want any of these sisters? Yi Xian, Yi Ling said seriously. Will they all be my sisters-in-law? Yi Xian said seriously, don't talk nonsense. Yi Xian asked, don't you like them? Yi Xian. Yi Ling was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, if I find so many sisters-in-law for you, won't you worry that I will only have sisters-in-law in my heart and not you? Yi Ling smiled sweetly. For me, I can have many sisters-in-law, but I will always have one sister, right? Yi Xian laughed and gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. You, don't think about these things all day long. Cultivation is the most important thing. Yi Ling suddenly stopped and looked at Yi Xian. Brother, I feel that if you don't like her, you must tell her. Don't hold her up. If you like her, you must express your feelings. Don't leave her hanging. Yi Xian gently flicked Yi Ling's little head. You have too many ideas. Yi Ling grabbed Yi Xian's hand and said seriously, Brother, I'm serious. Yi Xian laughed. Look at your brother's situation now. The people who want to kill your brother can line up from Qingqing to here. At this time, how can your brother still have time to talk about love? Is he tired of living? Moreover, if I were to be with them now, then they would definitely be targeted by many. Just look at you. How many times have you been targeted because you're with me? Yi Ling thought for a moment and said, That's true. Yi Xian laughed. We have to go back. Yi Ling nodded. She glanced at the surroundings, and there was a trace of reluctance in her eyes. Yi Xian said in a light voice, I promise you that I will take some time to accompany you around the world in the future. How about it? Yi Ling laughed. All right. Yi Xian laughed, and then he pulled Yi Ling along and vanished. Not long after the two of them left, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared. A woman stood in front of the white-haired old man. It was Lian Qian. The white-haired old man looked at Lian Qian. When did you come here? Lian Qian said indifferently, I don't understand. Is the fifth-dimensional treasure really that good? The white-haired old man sneered. If it's not good, then why didn't you ask Yi Xian to hand it over? If he is willing to hand it over, then why not let him live? Lian Qian shook her head and laughed. Hand over the pagoda? First, even if he does hand it over, your temple won't let him go. The more monstrous he is, the more afraid your temple will be. Second, to be honest, I'm actually willing for him to hand over the pagoda. Because then, your temple will realize how stupid you are in the future. The white-haired old man stared at Lian Qian. You know nothing about my temple's strength. Lian Qian said indifferently, I won't argue with you. If you want to target me, then continue to target me. Let's wait and see. After she finished speaking, she turned around and left. The white-haired old man didn't attack because it was meaningless. Moreover, he wasn't confident in his ability to keep the woman in front of him. In the distance, Lian Qian suddenly stopped and said, I still want to say something. You're really stupid. After she finished speaking, she vanished. Prison pagoda. In fact, this broken pagoda wasn't something that just anyone could possess. Only Yi Xian, who had countless backers behind him, could resist the karma brought by the prison pagoda. If it wasn't for the plain-dressed woman blocking Yi Xian from behind, this Yi Xian would have died more than 100 times. And could this temple block the karma of the prison pagoda? Definitely not. Because she came from the fifth dimension, She was very clear about how terrifying the karma of this pagoda was. In fact, even Yi Xian might not be able to completely block it. Whether or not Yi Xian could block it all depended on the strength of the plain-dressed woman. What level of strength did this plain-dressed woman reach? She didn't know. In the square, the white-haired old man looked at the back of the plain-dressed woman, his face expressionless. After a moment, the white-haired old man sneered. Then I'll fight with you. All along, the temple knew that the plain-dressed woman was very powerful, and they also knew that Yi Xian was not simple. This was because, until now, more and more mysterious and powerful people had appeared by Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian was definitely not simple. However, the temple still didn't choose to give up. Why? In addition to the fifth dimension treasure, there was another reason. The temple had enough confidence. After a few breaths, the white-haired old man raised his head to look at the distant starry sky and said softly, "The scholar should have arrived, right?" The scholar. As long as the scholar and the plain-dressed woman fought, the temple would know the strength of the plain-dressed woman. Then, the temple would immediately take action. They would first kill the plain-dressed woman, then kill Yi Xian. In the distant starry sky, the scholar of the temple was flying through the sky. At this moment, he had raised his speed to the limit. At this moment, his fighting spirit was high. Right now, he wanted to find the plain-dressed woman and fight with her. Fight. The more the scholar moved forward, the stronger the fighting spirit on his body became. In the end, the fighting spirit on his body actually changed. The scholar's speed became faster and faster. Finally, in an unknown starry sky, he saw the person he had been looking for. In the distant starry sky, there stood a woman. She wore a plain dress and had her hands behind her back. Not far from the plain-dressed woman, there was a black stone coffin floating. The stone coffin was surrounded by red iron chains as thick as an arm. In front of the stone coffin, there stood a hunchbacked middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wore a black robe and only had one hand, one leg, and one eye. He was dragging the black coffin with his right hand. The middle-aged man looked at the plain-dressed woman. His single eye was filled with seriousness. When he saw the scholar, the middle-aged man looked at the scholar. At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from the scholar's body. Boom! In an instant, the surrounding starry sky began to boil violently. The unknown realm. The moment he saw the plain-dressed woman, the scholar had actually reached the legendary unknown realm. The scholar looked at the plain-dressed woman and the corners of his mouth curled up. "I am the temple scholar. Please enlighten me." His words were filled with invincible confidence. P.S. Recently, I have updated a little early. Because I have been busy recently, I can only update earlier. Right. I want to write like crazy. I want to save chapters like crazy. Only by stockpiling will I be able to stand up straight. Asking for votes. Chapter 734. Confidence. At this moment, the scholar possessed the confidence to be invincible. He possessed the strength to do so. The unknown realm. Not to mention now, this realm was ranked amongst the top even in the entire history of the Sky-Earth world. The unknown realm was an expert that stood at the top of the pyramid. He wanted to fight. At this moment, the scholar's heart was filled with battle intent. All along the way, his mental state had changed from fear to fearlessness, and this change in mental state had allowed him to break through his shackles and arrive at the legendary unknown realm. Now, he urgently needed a battle. If he fought the woman in a plain dress, then perhaps he would be able to improve further. The woman in a plain dress turned to look at the scholar. Her expression was calm, and her gaze was indifferent. Her gaze was slightly hurtful, and it was like a lofty god looking down at an ant on the mortal world. The scholar slowly clenched his right hand. "Please provide me with your guidance." As soon as he spoke, a formidable aura suddenly swept out from within him, and then it enveloped the woman in a plain dress. However, this aura vanished without a trace before it could even approach the woman in a plain dress. The scholar frowned slightly when he saw this, and a trace of seriousness appeared in his eyes as he stared fixedly at the woman in a plain dress. "Please provide me with your guidance." The one-legged man glanced at the scholar and the woman in a plain dress in silence. The woman in a plain dress gazed at the scholar in silence. The scholar's expression turned icy cold. "I seek a battle. You." The one-legged man suddenly said. "She's already attacked." The scholar looked at the one-legged man and frowned. "What do you mean?" The one-legged man gazed at the scholar in silence. The scholar was just about to speak when his expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly covered his throat with both hands. Fresh blood sprayed out like a fountain. At this moment, the scholar was completely stunned. He looked at the woman in a plain dress in disbelief. "This. When did you attack?" The woman in a plain dress didn't answer the scholar. She turned to look at the nearby black coffin, and no one knew what she was thinking. The scholar intended to ask something else, but the one-legged man spoke abruptly. "Her sword transcends time and space. Simply put, you're too weak, so you weren't able to see her attack." The scholar suddenly roared furiously. "No, I'm in the unknown realm. How could I possibly not be able to see her attack? Impossible." At this time the one-legged man suddenly said, "Weakness limits your imagination." Puh! The scholar directly spat out a mouthful of blood essence. His gaze turned sluggish. At this moment, the martial Tao faith in his mind instantly collapsed. He had cultivated his entire life and even reached the uncharted realm. Yet, he couldn't even take a single blow from the other party. At that moment the one-legged man suddenly said, "She is just a clone." The scholar was stunned, and in the next moment, his body fell backward. The instant he fell, a talisman suddenly flew out of his hand. This talisman passed through the layers of the starry heavens and finally arrived before the heavenly gate of the profound yellow great realm Sky Dome realm. In front of the heaven gate, the white-haired elder opened his right hand and the talisman fell into his hand before burning. At the same time a voice sounded out, "You can't." Just these two words. "I can't?" The white-haired old man frowned slightly. After a moment of silence he said softly, "Don't be careless." With that, he turned around and left. Ching Ching. Yi Clan. Ancestral Hall. Ancestors. Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. "Why?" At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her two little hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling. She was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you remove him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to remove him from the position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this moment the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly smiled and said, "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder said coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to show off. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of crown prince. What are you shouting for?" With that, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap.
A crisp slap sounded. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She just covered her cheek tightly. Yi Long sized up the guard and asked with a smile, "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "I am Zhang Mu. Greetings, Crown Prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are good. After I become the Crown Prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "I will go through fire and water for the Crown Prince. I will do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show any mercy. Do you understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly stopped when he saw something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking toward the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged at Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and said, "Your man." As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu. As he walked up to Yi Ling, seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Ching Ching! Yi Clan. Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time the new prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning."
the great elder coldly replied. Then flog her 30 times.
Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in.
Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position, and it's everyone's wish.
What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap.
A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to have seen something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pang! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Puh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, "Your man!" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts!" Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pang! Chapter 735. Just at that moment, Shangguan Xian blocked in front of Seven. She bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty." Seven said, "Let's talk in the future." After saying that, she pulled Yi Xian and disappeared into the distance. Within the hall, Jiang Jiu and Shangguan Xian were stunned. In the clouds, Yi Xian and Seven flew on their swords. On the way, Yi Xian looked at Seven. "Seven, what is going on?" Seven said, "I am bringing you to a place." Yi Xian asked, "Where?" Seven said, "You will know when you get there." Yi Xian. About an hour later, Xueqi brought Yi Xian to a forest. In the forest, he saw the Grand Elder of the Taoism faction. The Grand Elder looked at Yi Xian and didn't say a word. Seven looked at Yi Xian. "Follow me later." Yi Xian nodded. "What are we going to do?" Seven said, "To inherit the legacy." "Legacy?" Yi Xian was stunned and then asked, "What legacy?" Seven said, "I don't know yet." Yi Xian nodded and then he looked at the Grand Elder. "Senior seems a little unhappy." The Grand Elder said calmly, "Let's go." After saying that, he walked into the distance. 7 looked at Yi Xian. After this matter, I will return to the god country. You can't face those things alone. After saying that, she disappeared into the distance. Yi Xian kept silent. He didn't have any complaints towards 7. This was because he knew what kind of person Xueqi was. She would never run away from her responsibilities. A moment later, Yi Xian shook his head. No matter what, he still hoped that 7 would return. 7 wasn't weaker than him at all, and with 7 there, the pressure on him would be much smaller. Moreover, the god hall belonged to 7. Roughly an hour later, Yi Xian followed Xueqi and the Great Elder to a desert. The Great Elder and Xueqi didn't fly but walked. Yi Xian suddenly looked at the Grand Elder. Senior, do you know much about the deities Templar? Grand Elder said indifferently. You can say so. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Senior, what's your relationship with the Divine Hall? Great Elder said. Hostile. Yi Xian hurriedly said. Then why don't you go out and kill them? The Great Elder glanced at Yi Xian. Do you think it's that easy? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Senior, just what kind of force is this deity Templar? Why so mysterious? Mysterious? The Great Elder shook his head. You are the most mysterious person. Yi Xian was stunned. Me? The Great Elder's face was expressionless. You know the founding masters of a few large powers in Shenhuang Great World. Moreover, you have such a mysterious woman in a plain dress behind you. No matter if it's my Taoist faction or the deities Templar, none of us know anything about her. Aren't you mysterious? When he spoke up to hear, he gazed at Yi Xian. Tell me the truth. Do you know the ancestors of my Taoist faction? Yi Xian was speechless. Not far away, Xueqi glanced at Yi Xian and said, You really know quite a lot of people. Yi Xian laughed bitterly. Actually, I don't know them at all. But they seem to know me. The Great Elder asked, Who is your father? Yi Xian shrugged. I don't know. The Great Elder fell silent for a moment, and then he said, It might be because of your father. Of course, it might be because of your previous life as well. Previous life? Yi Xian shook his head. Maybe. The Great Elder said softly, Let me tell you about the temple. Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. He knew too little about this temple. The Great Elder said softly, The temple is a very, very ancient force. It can be said that they have existed since the early days of the birth of the four-dimensional universe. Together with my Taoist faction and the ancient monster clan, they can be said to be the oldest force in the four-dimensional universe. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The ancient monster clan? The Great Elder nodded. An extremely powerful demon clan. However, they seem to have disappeared. Yi Xian asked, They seem to have disappeared? The Great Elder nodded slightly. At that time, the ancient monster clan and Attendo went to another unknown universe. After that, there was no news of them. My Taoist faction once sent people to investigate, but they found that they have all disappeared. When he spoke up to hear, he paused slightly, and his expression became quite solemn. If they were killed by someone, then how strong would that person be? If they were not killed by someone, then why would they disappear without a trace? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Could it be that someone from the fifth dimension did it? The Great Elder shook his head. Since ancient times, the fifth dimension has always been a legend, until the appearance of the pagoda in your body. That pagoda proved that the fifth dimension really exists. Once you enter the fifth dimension, it is said that you can reverse life and death and achieve immortality. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then said, Senior, is immortality really that important? The Great Elder glanced at Yi Xian and sneered. If you don't cultivate, you can at most live for 100 years. If you cultivate, you can live for a few hundred years. And many people have lived for thousands of years. Do you know what these people fear the most? It is death. It is getting closer and closer to death. If you don't break through, you will get closer and closer to death. You don't feel that now because cultivating is like cheating for you. Moreover, you have so many treasures on you. However, not everyone is like you. Do you understand? Yi Xian was speechless. 7 suddenly said. He is working hard too. The Great Elder was expressionless. He is working hard and his background is stronger than the other. It is really unlucky for the God Hall to meet you. Yi Xian said solemnly. Senior, to be honest, I didn't offend them first. They were the ones who wanted to mess with me and I was forced to fight back. The great elder shook his head. Little fellow, the God Hall isn't that simple. They have developed to this day and their foundations are so deep that even our Taoist faction doesn't know about them. Although you aren't simple, you have to be careful when you meet them. Yi Xian looked at the great elder. Senior, isn't your Taoist faction prepared to fight them? The great elder didn't say anything. Yi Xian said with a smile. Are you going to wait until I finish the fight with them before you leave the mountain? The great elder said. You don't have to worry about that. Yi Xian shrugged and didn't say anything else. He didn't place his hopes on the gate. At this moment, the grand elder suddenly stopped. Yi Xian looked up and saw a magnificent city at the end of the horizon. The city was enormous, and the city walls alone were nearly 1,000 feet tall. Even though he was far away from it, Yi Xian could not help but feel a sense of insignificance. The sky above the city was covered in dark clouds. Around the city, black crows would fly past. It was really desolate. Yi Xian's eyes landed in front of the city gate. A few hundred feet away from the gate, there was a giant iron pillar. A middle-aged man was tied to it. His long hair covered his face and one couldn't see what he looked like. The great elder said, Let's go. After saying that, he brought Yi Xian and 7 to the front of the iron pillar. On it, there would be black crows circling. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the man on the pillar. This is? The first elder said softly. He was once a human king, and also the last human king in human history. Human king. Yi Xian said, Senior, what kind of existence is this human king you speak of? The great elder said, It is the human king. In the early days of the four-dimensional universe, many living beings appeared. Humans were one of them. At that time, humans had many powerful enemies, such as the ancient monster clan, the heavenly demon clan, and other unknown beings. At that time, the first human king led the human race to survive on this land. At that time, our human king was on equal footing with the kings of other races and the so-called gods. And towards the end, as he spoke, he looked at the man on the pillar and softly said, The human race is too strong, and those so-called gods are afraid. Therefore the gods began to target the human race. The man in front of you is the last human king in the history of the human race. He has failed. Therefore, he was punished by the gods as a warning to the human race to fear and obey the gods. Yi Xian said, Senior, there doesn't seem to be any difference now. The great elder sneered. There isn't any difference? Do you know why everyone in the outside world only knows about the unknown realm, but not what lies beyond it? Yi Xian said, It has something to do with the gods. The great elder said coldly, The gods above only allow humans to reach the unknown realm. This is why forces like the Xueqi clan do not have any unknown realm experts, because they do not allow humans who are too strong to appear. Yi Xian said, As far as I know, forces like the Xueqi clan once had unknown realm experts. The great elder looked at Yi Xian. Then do you know that they could have had more unknown realm experts? As for the few that appeared, it was just the divine race's doing. They control the human experts, but they will not completely exterminate them. This is because they want other humans to see hope, to let other humans feel that they cannot break through because of themselves. This is why there are so few unknown realm experts even in the Xianhuan Great World. Yi Xian frowned. They control the human experts? The great elder said coldly, Not only do they control the human experts, but they also control the experts of other clans, such as the demon race and some ancient clans. They control anyone who poses a threat to them. As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. You are an anomaly. Even without that treasure, they would not tolerate you. Now, you just have to pray that the woman behind you is strong enough. Otherwise, even 100 of you will die without a burial. Yi Xian glanced at the great elder. Great elder, what about your Taoist sect? What kind of power is your Taoist sect? The great elder was expressionless. It has nothing to do with you. Remember, it was little Seventh who sent you here. What you obtain later will depend on your own fortune. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the man on the pillar. The next moment, he waved his right hand, and countless golden lights shot into the sky. These golden lights enveloped the man, and soon, the man's body began to tremble. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly rang out from the distant horizon. Impudent! As soon as the voice fell, a monstrous pressure suddenly descended from the sky.
P.S. The recent updates have not been good. I have reflected on myself. It's my fault. If there are readers in the comments section who give suggestions or are dissatisfied, other readers should not attack them. This is what I deserve. The readers have spent money, and if they are unhappy, they can say it. Really, as long as they do not scold their loved ones, I will not delete them even if they scold me. Moreover, I will reflect on myself. Humans need to be spurred on. To be honest, the fact that they are still scolding me proves that they are still reading my book and still care about it. This proves that there is still hope for me. If there comes a day when there are no more people to scold, then there really is no hope for me. Therefore, whether it is the book review section manager or the readers, if someone gives suggestions or is too angry, everyone should not maliciously attack them, let alone say that they like reading it or not. They are not reading a pirated version. They have spent money, so they deserve my respect. In short, thank you everyone for your support. Thank you for your company. Chapter 736. Yi Xian raised his head. In the distant sky, a powerful force of pressure swept down. The divine hall. Yi Xian didn't attack, and he just gazed at the Grand Elder who stood nearby. The Grand Elder glanced coldly at the sky, and then a black shadow suddenly shot into the sky. Bang! As the black shadow shot up, the pressure in the sky instantly vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, another voice resounded from high above the clouds. How audacious! As soon as the voice resounded, a figure flew down from the clouds. As for the black shadow, it charged directly towards the figure. Bang! A shocking explosion suddenly resounded from high above the clouds. At the same time, a furious shout resounded. How dare you! As the voice faded, a few more explosions rang out in the clouds. Yi Xian looked at the Grand Elder from below. The latter paid no attention to the experts from the Divine Hall, and his gaze was fixed on the human king. At this moment, the human king's body was trembling slightly. Yi Xian had a slightly strange expression on his face. Could it be that the door intends to resurrect the human king? Suddenly, a black-clothed man with a spear in his hand charged down from high above the clouds. Bang! In an instant, a monstrous pressure swept down from the sky. The pressure had locked onto the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder didn't attack because a robust man had moved to meet the black-clothed man with a spear. Seeing that, Yi Xian could not help but throw the Grand Elder a look. It turned out that the Taoist faction had prepared for this. The four of them were fighting in the sky. As for the human king below, after he was enveloped by the golden light, some strange red runes appeared on his body, and these red runes started to dim bit by bit. At this moment, the Grand Elder's eyes were solemn. Suddenly, a figure shot down from high above the clouds. The figure was extremely swift to the point Yi Xian couldn't see it clearly. How formidable! Yi Xian's expression was solemn as well. Obviously, a true expert had appeared in the Divine Hall. Before the figure could approach the Great Elder, an old man suddenly appeared in front of the Great Elder. The old man wore a simple robe, and his figure looked a little thin. From his appearance, he was simply too weak to stand up to a gust of wind. The old man looked indifferently at the figure in front of him. He raised his hand and punched. Boom! The figure was forced to stop in place. It was a middle-aged man with a long sword on his back. The middle-aged man glanced at the old man and smiled. Dao Sex Old Ku, I didn't expect you to come out as well. Old Bitterness looked at the middle-aged man. Zhang Yu, I didn't expect you to still be alive. Zhang Yu smiled and said, a little disappointed? Old Bitterness said indifferently, what are you disappointed about? Don't think too highly of yourself. Zhang Yu laughed. Come, let's exchange 2 moves. As soon as he finished speaking, the sword on his back suddenly unsheathed. Chi! A beam of sword light slashed towards Lao Ku. Lao Ku took a step forward and punched out at the same time. Rumble! The beam of sword light shattered. At the same time, a sword stabbed towards the center of his forehead. However, his body actually forcefully resisted this attack. However, the powerful force contained within the sword caused the old man to retreat repeatedly. Right at this moment,
The old man suddenly punched forward once more. Rumble! Zhang Yu was instantly blasted flying. At the same time, a powerful aura swept through the surroundings. Boom! The space in front of the old man started to collapse layer by layer. It was an extremely shocking scene. Yi Xian looked at the Grand Elder who stood nearby. At this moment, the talismans around the human king were growing fainter and fainter. He's about to be revived? Yi Xian was filled with anticipation. He definitely hoped that the human king would be revived because the Dao sect was clearly enemies with the God Hall. If the human king were to be revived, then he would definitely cause trouble for the God Hall. At this moment, he hoped that someone would draw away the God Hall's firepower. Meanwhile, Seven walked over to Yi Xian's side. She glanced at the sky and said, "Be careful later." Yi Xian said softly, "Will the God Hall do something big?" Seven nodded. "It should be." Yi Xian nodded slightly, "You have to be careful as well." Seven gazed at Yi Xian. "I'm sorry for troubling you with the matters of the Divine Kingdom." Yi Xian shook his head. "We're friends." Friends. In Yi Xian's heart, he'd always treated Seven as a friend. Seven nodded slightly and was about to speak when she suddenly raised her head. The heaven entrance had appeared once more in the distant horizon. Seven frowned slightly when she saw this. The Grand Elder's expression became extremely solemn at this moment, and he started to speed up madly. A white-haired old man suddenly appeared in front of the heaven entrance. The white-haired old man looked down. He glanced at Yi Xian, and then at the Grand Elder who stood before Yi Xian. "You're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 armored figures suddenly appeared behind him. In the next moment, these 3 armored figures had appeared above the Grand Elder, and at practically the exact same moment, 3 afterimages charged towards these 3 armored figures. The white-haired old man frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. They came prepared? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. In the sky, hiss. A tearing sound resounded. In the next moment, it was like an enormous hole had been torn open in the sky, and a spatial rift that was over 3 kilometers long had appeared there. The rift was still expanding, and it arrived above the Grand Elder in the blink of an eye. The Great Elder still didn't move. At this moment, a huge object suddenly flew out from the space above the Great Elder's head. In the next moment, this huge object directly collided with the white-haired old man. Bang! In an instant, the white-haired old man was blasted over 1 kilometer back. Yi Xian gazed at the enormous creature. It was a demon beast that looked like a tiger, but it had 2 horns on its head. Moreover, its limbs were thick like pillars, and they were covered in pitch-black scales. The demon beast's fangs were as long as a human's arm, and their edges were sharp like blades. As soon as the demon beast appeared, Yi Xian's expression became solemn once more. Danger! That was his first thought. The demon beast's aura wasn't any weaker than the Emperor Hound's aura. The white-haired old man frowned slightly as he stood before the demon beast, a heavenly fiend tiger. As he spoke, he gazed at the Grand Elder who stood nearby. "Your Taoist sect has really put in a lot of effort." Meanwhile, the heavenly fiend tiger suddenly roared, and then it transformed into a ray of black light that charged towards the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly vanished. Bang! Along with an explosion, the heavenly fiend tiger was blasted away. The white-haired old man didn't pursue it, and he turned around and charged towards the Grand Elder instead. Suddenly the Grand Elder roared furiously, "Little Seven, stop him!" As soon as the Grand Elder finished speaking, a ray of light suddenly slashed towards the white-haired old man. The ray of light was extremely swift, and it arrived before the white-haired old man in the blink of an eye. Bang! The white-haired old man was actually pushed back by Little Seven's sword, and he was pushed back hundreds of feet. In front of Little Seven, the white-haired old man looked at Little Seven. "You're the little girl with the fate of a human monarch." Little Seven didn't speak. She pointed her sword diagonally towards the ground, and the sword in her hand trembled slightly. The white-haired old man sneered, and he pointed at the human monarch on the pillar not far away. "Do you see that? This is the fate of a human monarch." Little Seven suddenly disappeared. Chi! A ray of sword light pierced through the air. Not far away, the white-haired old man flicked his sleeves, and the space in front of him suddenly surged like a wave. Little Seven's ray of sword light was directly engulfed by this space, and at the same time, Little Seven retreated rapidly. The white-haired old man didn't care about little Seven, and his figure trembled as he charged towards the Grand Elder. Not far away, the Grand Elder's expression changed. At this moment, little Seven appeared in front of the white-haired old man again, and she suddenly stomped her right foot. 10,000 swords flying immortal. As soon as she finished speaking, numerous illusory swords of energy suddenly flew out from her body, and they slashed towards the white-haired old man in succession. The white-haired old man's expression changed when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly retreated explosively. However, the swords were even faster, and the white-haired old man blocked them as he retreated. In the blink of an eye, he'd retreated over 3 kilometers away. Meanwhile, the swords of energy that had flown out had suddenly combined into an enormous sword. The white-haired old man's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene, and he didn't dare act carelessly. He raised his hands, and a golden shield of energy suddenly appeared above him. At the same time, the space in front of him started to shrink layer by layer, and it formed a thick spatial barrier. This spatial barrier was like a wall, giving off a feeling of indestructibility. Suddenly, little Seven shouted furiously from afar, "Slash!" As soon as she finished speaking, the enormous sword suddenly slashed down from midair. Hiss! In an instant, the space in the path of the enormous sword was directly torn apart. This sword slashed directly against the spatial barrier. Bang! The entire spatial barrier shook violently, and countless cracks appeared on it. Meanwhile, little Seven suddenly shouted furiously, "Slash again!" As soon as she finished speaking, a ray of dazzling light suddenly erupted from the enormous sword. Bang! The spatial barrier instantly collapsed, and the enormous sword descended in a straight line and slashed down against the shield of energy above the white-haired old man. Bang! The entire shield instantly collapsed, and in an instant, the white-haired old man was pushed almost 3 kilometers back. After he stopped, a wisp of blood flowed from the corner of the white-haired old man's mouth, and his eyes were filled with a solemn expression as he looked up at little Seven. "What sort of freak are you?" Yi Xian was quite shocked in his heart as well. Little Seven's strength isn't just a few times stronger than before. Little Seven glanced at the white-haired old man, but she didn't speak and just walked back to the Grand Elder's side. The white-haired old man gazed at the human king on the pillar. At this moment, the talismans around the human king had almost vanished completely. Those talismans were restrictions, and once the restrictions vanished, the white-haired old man's expression suddenly became unsightly, and he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. "Hello." The white-haired old man looked coldly at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, what are you so proud of?" Yi Xian laughed. "Seeing you get beaten makes me happy." Haha. The white-haired old man glared at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian laughed. "Don't look at me like that. If you have the ability, then come and hit me." The white-haired old man looked coldly at Yi Xian. "You're cheap. Once that plain-dressed woman dies, let's see how you can still be so arrogant." Yi Xian's smile disappeared. "You have to go find her." The white-haired old man sneered. "What do you think?" Yi Xian. Chapter 737. They were looking for the plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian had never expected that the deity Templar would actually want to look for the plain-dressed woman. This time, he really didn't understand. Why did these people insist on looking for the plain-dressed woman? Could it be that they had obsessive-compulsive disorder? He knew that the main reason these people were going against the plain-dressed woman was because he was too weak. From the deity Templar's point of view, as long as they dealt with the plain-dressed woman, he, Yi Xian, would be like an ant on the ground, and they could do whatever they wanted. In the end, he hadn't been treated seriously by the deity Templar yet. Thinking of this, Yi Xian felt somewhat helpless. He looked at the white-haired elder not far away. "Old man, tell me honestly, am I really that weak? Don't tell me I don't have any bright spots." The white-haired elder looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, you aren't weak, but your opponent is my deity Templar. In front of my deity Templar, not to mention you, even the plain-dressed woman behind you is like an ant." Yi Xian spread his hands. "Then why don't you go and kill her?" The white-haired elder sneered. "That's because the true experts of my deity Templar aren't here, otherwise, she would have died 100 times over." Yi Xian was about to speak when Lian Qian's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. "Don't talk to a retard, keep your distance from a retard." Yi Xian. At this moment, the white-haired elder suddenly said, "Yi Xian." Yi Xian looked at the white-haired elder, who pointed at the nearby human king. Did you see what happened to him? This person was the human king, and his strength back then could be said to be heaven-defying. But what happened to him? Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, the human king in front of the great elder suddenly opened his eyes. Boom! In an instant, the sky changed color. A true change. The dark clouds above the city behind the human king actually scattered at this moment. Not only that, but the surrounding ground began to tremble, and countless black crows retreated like the tide. Soon, a ray of sunlight sprinkled on the ground. As Yi Xian looked at that human sovereign, a strange feeling arose in his heart. Not far from Yi Xian, the white-haired old man calmly watched that sovereign personage. Just at this moment, the sovereign personage suddenly raised his head and looked at the heavenly gate of the Sky Dome realm. The aura of a deity. In front of human king, the great elder quickly bowed respectfully. Greetings, human king! The experts of the Tao sect bowed successively as well. Greetings, mortal king! On the other hand, the expressions of the experts from deities Templar turned solemn. Sovereign personage. They did not know what it meant to be a human king, but they could feel the power of this man before them. Truly powerful. Yi Xian's expression turned solemn. The man in front of him gave him a dangerous feeling. It was extremely dangerous. The person in front of him had definitely surpassed the so-called unknown realm. Right at this moment, black lightning suddenly gathered above the clouds. Seeing this, the faces of the people of the divine hall below changed drastically, and they all retreated. The expression of the Tao sect's great elder also changed. This is deity's punishment. Retreat quickly. As soon as he spoke, he immediately retreated with Xueqi. They only stopped after retreating a kilometer away. As for Yi Xian, he had already retreated more than 10 kilometers away. The instant that black lightning appeared, he had already retreated. The situation was not good. Yi Xian was already prepared to flee. The deities Templar and the Tao sect might be going all out. Yi Xian looked at the nearby human king expressionlessly as he stared at the bolt of black lightning. Just at this moment, the bolt of black lightning suddenly descended. Boom! In an instant, the entire sky was set ablaze. An overwhelming pressure swept down as if it wanted to crush the world. It was incomparably horrifying. The human king said softly, "Deity's punishment?" As soon as he spoke, he waved his right hand. Boom! A golden light soared into the sky. In an instant, that black lightning disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the white-haired old man and the others immediately changed. The human king's strength was much stronger than they'd imagined. The human king turned around to look at the Grand Elder and the others. All of you are. The Grand Elder hurriedly bowed respectfully. All of us are descendants of the human race. When he spoke up to this point, he was slightly excited. Now that His Majesty the Human King has been resurrected, our human race will prosper. The human king shook his head, and then he looked up into the sky and gazed into the distance. The power of the gods is unprecedentedly strong. As he spoke, he looked at himself and shook his head again. How can I resist them with a crippled body? Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, don't be discouraged. The deity's Templar isn't that strong. Moreover, we have no way out. Because even if we don't attack them, they won't let us go. The human king looked at Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, he was slightly taken aback. In the next moment, he opened his palm. In an instant, the world prison pagoda in Yi Xian's body flew out and landed firmly in his palm. The pagoda. Seeing the pagoda, the eyes of the experts from the deity's Templar immediately became fiery. A fifth-dimensional treasure. Even the eyes of the experts from the Tao sect became fiery. Regarding this fifth-dimensional treasure, the Tao sect was also tempted. However, because of Xueqi, the Tao sect did not make a move against Yi Xian. Moreover, with the deity's Templar present, the Tao sect temporarily gave up on this fifth-dimensional treasure. This was because the Tao sect could not afford the revenge of Yi Xian and the deity's Templar. However, this did not mean that they had truly given up on this fifth-dimensional treasure. This was the key to entering the fifth dimension. Not far away, Yi Xian looked at the human king, not saying anything. The human king sized up the pagoda in his hand, and then softly said, Fifth dimension. Yi Xian asked, Senior, do you recognize this item? The human king looked at Yi Xian. This item is not a fourth-dimensional item. The aura of the Grand Tao it contains does not belong to the fourth dimension. Therefore it should come from the legendary fifth dimension. Yi Xian nodded. It indeed comes from the fifth dimension. The human king softly said, Fifth dimension. As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian. You are not simple to actually have such a treasure. The karma of this item is extremely strong. An ordinary person would not be able to bear it. However, you were able to live until now. Logically speaking, you should have died long ago. Yi Xian. Not far away, the white-haired old man suddenly said, Sire, you do not know. The young man in front of you has a lot of people backing him up. However, he will soon have no backers. The human king glanced at the white-haired old man. You are a human. The white-haired old man softly said, Yes. The human king expressionlessly said, If you don't want to be a human, why do you want to be a god's dog? The white-haired old man's face became somewhat gloomy. Because gods can make me stronger. The human king shook his head. Without them, you can become stronger. It is them who deprive you of the right to become stronger. The white-haired old man softly said, I believe that you did not resurrect just to talk about this with me, right? The human king ignored the white-haired old man. He looked at Yi Xian and lightly smiled. What do you think of humans and those so-called gods? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, The human race should become stronger. We humans should not become those so-called gods' dogs. Haha. The human king laughed. Good. Well said. Our human race should become stronger. Fortunately, after countless years, our human race still has such a brave man. Not far away, the white-haired old man suddenly said. He is flattering you. The human king suddenly looked at the white-haired old man. Noisy. As his voice fell, he waved his right hand. Bang. The white-haired old man was instantly blasted thousands of meters away, and his body directly dissipated without a trace. His soul also became illusory at this moment. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the deity's Templar experts instantly became extremely solemn, and all of them quickly retreated. As for the white-haired old man, he was completely stunned. At this moment, he finally understood how terrifying a human king was. The white-haired old man, who was already in soul form, suddenly turned around and was about to flee. His soul hadn't completely disappeared, and if he returned to the deity's Templar, he would be able to repair his soul and reconstruct his body. But at the moment he turned around, a sword light suddenly stabbed into his soul. Soul-suppressing sword. This sword stabbed into the white-haired old man's body, and his soul instantly trembled violently. The white-haired old man looked at Yi Xian who had appeared in front of him and roared, Yi Xian! Shameless villain, you took advantage of me when I was weak. Yi Xian grinned. You bully the young, aren't you shameless? The white-haired old man still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly shouted angrily, Shut up! Little soul, absorb it. As his voice fell, the soul-suppressing sword directly absorbed the white-haired old man's soul. Wow! Within Yi Xian's mind, Little Soul's voice suddenly resounded, Young lord, this soul is great nourishment. Yi Xian laughed. Great nourishment is good. Finished speaking, he looked at the deity's Templar powerhouses on the right. At this moment, these deities' Templar powerhouses had extremely ugly expressions. They were about to attack, but at this time, Yi Xian suddenly returned to Human King's side. Everyone. Human King glanced at Yi Xian. You are a swordsman? Yi Xian nodded. Yes, I am a swordsman. Human King slightly nodded, then handed the prison pagoda in his hand back to Yi Xian. Take good care of this item. For you, since you can bear its karma, you can also enjoy the good fortune it brings. Yi Xian put away the prison pagoda, then said, Senior doesn't want this item? Human King laughed. Only the weak and foolish would forcibly take something that doesn't belong to them. Yi Xian was silent. At this time, Human King looked at Grand Elder and the others. Since you all respect me, then do you all listen to my words? Grand Elder and the others hurriedly nodded. Of course. Human King slightly nodded. Just now I saw greed in your eyes. Remember, this item is not something you all can possess. Do not have any designs on this item. Saying this he paused, then added, Do not have any designs on this item at any time. The Tao sect people looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. At this time, Human King asked again, "What?" Grand Elder and the others were startled. Grand Elder quickly said, "We will definitely not have any designs on this item. Your Majesty, the deity's Templar powerhouses should be arriving soon. Why don't we leave first?" Human King lightly laughed. "This universe is under the control of the deity's Templar. Where can we go?" Saying this, he looked up at the Sky Dome realm and softly said, "They're coming. P.S. Don't dare to play football monthly ticket. Everyone, just give me some recommendation votes." Chapter 738. It's here? Yi Xian raised his head. In the distant clouds, a black and red divine lightning had quietly condensed. Black and red divine lightning. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed when they saw this bolt of lightning. The experts of the temple had already retreated to the Sky Dome realm. Below, the expressions of the Tao sect experts became extremely grave. This divine lightning was more than 10 times stronger than the previous one. Even an unknown realm expert would find it difficult to withstand the force of the fall. Below, the Great Elder hurriedly looked at Human King and said with a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, should we retreat first?" "Retreat?" Human King shook his head. "They have trapped me for so many years. How can they let me return to the world?" The Great Elder said with a trembling voice, "With your Majesty's strength," Human King said softly, "they are stronger than ever before." Saying this, he looked at the Great Elder and the others. "Let's go." The Great Elder hesitated. "Your Majesty, are you really not coming with us?" Human King shook his head. "I can't." Saying this, he suddenly looked at Xueqi not far away. With a point of his finger, a golden light suddenly entered Xueqi's forehead. At the same time, a golden square seal steadily landed in front of Xueqi. "This is the human ruler seal. From now on, you are the human race's ruler. As for your future path, you can choose it yourself. There is no need to bear any burden, because it is too tiring." Xueqi looked at the human ruler seal and nodded slightly. She put away the human ruler seal. In an instant, a purple light directly enveloped Xueqi. Boom! In an instant, Xueqi's entire body trembled violently. A purple light directly enveloped her body. Seeing this scene, the Great Elder immediately became excited. Crepe Myrtle Star Qi. This was the Crepe Myrtle Star Qi. In the past, this Qi was ranked third, second only to the legendary Yin and Yang Qi. With the protection of the Crepe Myrtle Star Qi, Xueqi was invincible. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of Human King. "Senior, is there anything suitable for me?" The Great Elder's mouth twitched. "Yi Xian, have some face." Yi Xian ignored the Great Elder. He looked at Human King and quickly said, "Senior, I'm a bit poor. If Senior has something you don't need, you can give it to me. I want it all." The Great Elder was somewhat dissatisfied. "Yi Xian, that's enough." Right at this moment, the Human King suddenly smiled and said, "What a rare opportunity." With that said, he flicked his finger, and a golden storage ring flew toward Yi Xian. "You can have the trinkets inside." Yi Xian hurriedly put away the storage ring. Just as he was about to take a look, the Human King suddenly said, "You guys leave first." There was a hint of seriousness in his voice. Not far away, the First Elder was about to say something when Human King spoke again. "Let's go." The First Elder and the others looked at the horizon and bowed slightly to the Human King. Then they turned around and left. Yi Xian looked at the Human King and also bowed. Then, he turned around and left. At this moment, above the gate of heaven, a powerful aura suddenly enveloped Yi Xian, who was below. Yi Xian's expression changed. He raised his head and looked up into the sky. Within that bolt of lightning, a woman had appeared out of nowhere. It was a woman wearing a white dress. Not only was the woman wearing a white dress, but her hair was also pure white. There was a cinnabar dot between her eyebrows. The woman's eyes were covered with a white cloth. At this moment, Yi Xian felt that the woman was looking at him. The woman looked down. "You are that Yi Xian." Her voice carried an invisible pressure that made it difficult for people to breathe. What a powerful woman. Yi Xian looked straight at the woman. "That's me." The woman was expressionless. "Deity Temple is a bunch of idiots. You're so weak. Yet they didn't deal with you first. Instead, they went to find that woman in a white dress. They are so stupid. Today, let me deal with you. As soon as she finished speaking, she casually waved her hand. In an instant, a bolt of lightning suddenly descended from the sky. The target of this bolt of lightning was Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression changed. This woman actually didn't play by the rules. Yi Xian didn't take it head-on. He turned around and ran. However, the divine lightning directly chased after him. Yi Xian ran madly, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the distant horizon. The woman in the white dress wanted to make another move, but at this moment, the human king suddenly laughed. "Your target is me." As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura directly locked onto the woman in the white dress. The woman in the white dress withdrew her gaze from the distant Yi Xian. She looked at the human king below. "Human king, you only have yourself to blame for ending up like this." The human king laughed. "You gods want to be high and mighty, above the human race. You want people to worship you. My human race will never become the slaves of the gods." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stomped his right foot and turned into a beam of golden light that soared into the sky. In the sky, the woman in the white dress sneered. "It seems that the gods making the human race pass down their inheritance was a wrong decision." As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and slammed it down. Boom! A bolt of lightning suddenly descended from the sky, directly blasting the golden light above the human king's head. Rumble! In an instant, the entire horizon shook violently, and the surrounding space started to collapse layer by layer. At this moment, the golden light suddenly shattered the bolt of lightning. In the next instant, the golden light appeared above the clouds. Rumble! Rumble! Explosions resounded continuously in the entire horizon. The surrounding space continuously collapsed, and it was spreading rapidly in all directions. At this moment, the entire black-yellow great world was shocked. All the experts looked at the Sky Dome realm. Someone was fighting with the deity's hall? On the other side, Yi Xian stopped. The divine lightning was still behind him. He turned around and slashed down with his sword. Chi! This slash directly tore the lightning apart. However, he himself was also forced back 100 zhong. Yi Xian put away the executing heaven's sword and looked up at the horizon. In the distant horizon, it was pitch black. The entire space in the sky had already been annihilated and shattered. In that pitch-black spatial black hole, the two were still fighting. Countless lightning bolts appeared continuously. It was like the end of the world. Who would win? Naturally, Yi Xian hoped that the human king would win. However, he had a bad premonition. At this moment, a 7-colored divine lightning suddenly appeared in the spatial black hole. Boom! Along with a heaven-shaking explosion, a figure retreated rapidly from the spatial black hole. This person was the human king. In the process of retreating, the golden light around the human king started to dissipate bit by bit. Defeated. Below, Yi Xian's expression sank. He raised his head and looked at the white-haired woman in the sky. This woman was not just ordinarily strong. The white-haired woman looked at the human king not far away. What a joke! The invincible human king of the past is actually so weak. Saying this, she suddenly turned her head and looked at Yi Xian below. "I will deal with you later." Yi Xian was expressionless. "Do you really think I am afraid of you?" The white-haired woman's expression was cold. "You are as weak as a chicken. If they were not afraid of the person behind you, they would have eliminated you long ago. It is also this group of idiots who did not eliminate you first. Instead, they insisted on finding that plain-dressed woman. Truly a group of retards." Yi Xian thought for a while and then said, "I feel that you should go find her first." The white-haired woman sneered. "What's the difference between killing you and killing her first?" Yi Xian was silent. He felt that something was wrong. This white-haired woman did not follow the rules. This time he was in danger. At this moment, the white-haired woman suddenly looked at the human king not far away. When she shifted her gaze, Yi Xian turned and ran. It was better to run first. The white-haired woman frowned slightly when she saw Yi Xian flee. "You want to leave?" As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand. In an instant, a wall of lightning appeared in front of Yi Xian. At the same time, Countless bolts of lightning shot violently towards him. Yi Xian frowned slightly, and then he suddenly slashed with his sword. Hiss! A wave of sword light surged out, and in an instant, the wall of lightning in front of him was instantly shattered. In midair, the white-haired woman frowned slightly. You do have some strength. As she spoke, she was about to attack again. But right at this moment, she suddenly turned around to look at the nearby human king. At this moment, a golden dragon had suddenly appeared around the human king. The white-haired woman frowned slightly when she saw this golden dragon. A chosen sky dragon. I never expected that you would still have a trace of karmic luck. The human king grinned. Come, let's fight again. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into an enormous golden dragon that charged into the sky. At this moment, a dragon roar resounded throughout the entire heaven and earth realm. All beasts submitted. In midair, the white-haired woman's eyes narrowed slightly. She opened her palm, and a bolt of 7-colored lightning gathered in her palm. In the next moment, she suddenly charged out, and a bolt of lightning tore through the horizon. There was a moment of silence. Boom! The entire horizon suddenly exploded, and countless rays of golden light and lightning shot out in all directions. Below, Yi Xian was shaken by the shockwave and was pushed back repeatedly. This time, he was pushed back several thousand feet. And when he stopped, the space in front of him had already been shattered into a spatial black hole. And within that spatial black hole, the human king and the white-haired woman faced each other from a distance. Who won? Yi Xian hurriedly looked at the two of them. Not far away, the human king's body was gradually turning illusory. As for the white-haired woman, she was still the same. Yi Xian frowned. Lost again? At this moment, the human king suddenly pointed at Yi Xian from afar. Go! As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of golden light directly entered Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian's body trembled violently, and a powerful aura swept out from his body. Yi Xian was stunned, and then looked at the human king. Senior? This is... The human king looked at Yi Xian. Go! Yi Xian turned and ran. He ran very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, disappeared into the horizon. The human king was slightly stunned, and then shook his head with a smile. Little guy. As he said this, he looked at the white-haired woman in front of him. The human race will never be destroyed. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly transformed into a ray of golden light and charged at the white-haired woman. At this moment, his body directly burned. The white-haired woman narrowed her eyes. Burning the source. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly clenched her fists. In an instant, a sky full of lightning suddenly appeared, and these lightning bolts covered the entire horizon like a giant net. Boom! An explosion suddenly resounded through the 9 heavens. Chapter 739. As soon as the explosion resounded, the space in an area of over 100,000 kilometers was instantly blasted into powder. It was pitch black. Just like that, the space in the surroundings was finally repaired by the laws of the heavens and the earth after around an hour passed. At this moment, only the white-haired woman remained in front of the heaven gate. Her countenance was pale, and there was blood on the corner of her mouth. Moreover, her expression was extremely unsightly. A short while passed before she turned around to look at where Yi Xian stood just now. But it was empty. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man suddenly arrived in front of the white-haired woman. The middle-aged man bowed respectfully, and he was just about to speak when the white-haired woman suddenly raised her hand and slapped him. Slap! The middle-aged man was blasted over 1 kilometer away. The middle-aged man was stunned. The white-haired woman glanced coldly at him. What a bunch of idiots! The middle-aged man was stunned and then he said, My lord, I... The white-haired woman suddenly vanished. Slap! The middle-aged man was instantly blasted flying again. This time, he flew over 3 kilometers away. Moreover, his body even started to crack apart at this moment. The expressions of the experts of the Divine Hall changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they retreated. The white-haired woman glanced coldly at the middle-aged man who'd been slapped away. All of you are idiots. That fellow, Yi Xian, is so weak, so why didn't all of you just kill him? The middle-aged man spoke with a trembling voice. My lord, there's someone standing behind Yi Xian. The white-haired woman spoke furiously. Someone? So, All of you went to look for that person and didn't act against him? The middle-aged man broke out in cold sweat. My lord, that woman isn't simple at all. So long as we deal with her, then Yi Xian will be destroyed with a flick of our fingers. The white-haired woman suddenly vanished. Bang! The middle-aged man was blasted flying again, and his body shattered into pieces this time. The expressions of the others here changed drastically, and some of them even started trembling. The white-haired woman gazed coldly at the middle-aged man who was in soul form. Let me ask you, do we have to fight that woman in a simple dress in the end? The middle-aged man nodded. Yes, yes. His voice was trembling. The white-haired woman spoke fiercely. Since we're going to fight sooner or later, then why don't we eliminate Yi Xian first? Ha! Do you have human heads and pig brains? As soon as she finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from her body. Boom! In the surroundings, the deity's Templar experts were forced to retreat. The white-haired woman turned around and looked down with an extremely cold expression. A bunch of idiots. Why didn't you kill him when you could? Why did you have to look for his backer? Have all your 1,000 years of cultivation gone to waste? With that, she flicked her sleeves and left. Pass down my order. Immediately search for Yi Xian's whereabouts. If you find him, kill him at all costs. By the time she finished speaking, she had already disappeared. Everyone in the surroundings instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this. Meanwhile, one of the old men spoke in a low voice. Look for Yi Xian. Another middle-aged man asked. That woman in the plain dress, the old man said angrily. I don't care about that woman in a plain dress. Kill Yi Xian first. With that, he turned around and disappeared. Soon, all the experts from the Pantheon Temple disappeared. Below, in a certain mountain range, as soon as Yi Xian landed, he immediately flew over. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. He sat down with his legs crossed. There was actually a golden dragon circling around his body. He knew what the human king had given him in the end. It should be the chosen sky dragon. At this moment, he felt as if there was a ball of fire burning in his body. Lian Qian suddenly appeared in front of him. She glanced at Yi Xian and frowned slightly. Enter the pagoda. With that, she directly carried Yi Xian into the prison pagoda. Inside the pagoda, the space around Yi Xian rippled like water. Soon, his body began to change. Ah! At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. From his eye sockets, 2 golden rays suddenly shot out and directly hit the walls of the prison pagoda. Boom! Not far away, the walls of the prison pagoda trembled slightly. After a while, Yi Xian suddenly stood up. At this moment, there was actually a golden dragon pattern around his body. That golden dragon seemed to be carved on his body. Yi Xian was stunned, then looked at Lian Qian. Miss Lian Qian, this is? Lian Qian said lightly, your current body has reached the peak of the Ascension Realm. The Ascension Realm. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, then said, because of that golden dragon? Lian Qian nodded. That dragon is not simple. It has now merged with your body. Your current body is actually equivalent to its body. However, it seems to have been injured previously. Otherwise, your body might be even stronger. With that, she slightly paused, then said, your body should not be the only one that has become stronger. Try your current strength. Yi Xian nodded, then clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force gathered in his fist. Not only that, an illusory golden dragon actually appeared behind him. This. Yi Xian was stunned. This. At this moment, he was completely dumbfounded. The golden dragon. At this moment, he could clearly sense the golden dragon. Not only that, but he could also sense an extremely powerful force. A force that didn't belong to him, but he could control it. The force of the golden dragon. Meanwhile, Lian Qian suddenly said, the dragon in your body is not simple. Yi Xian looked at Lian Qian. Miss Lian Qian, do you know its origins? Lian Qian shook her head. I don't. The reason it's not simple is because it wasn't rejected by your bloodline after it merged with you. Your bloodline isn't normal, but it definitely isn't ordinary since it wasn't rejected by your bloodline. No matter what, your current combat strength has improved by leaps and bounds. Not only has it made up for the flaws in your body, it has even made up for the flaws in your soul. If you were to execute that boundless sword now, it would definitely be extremely powerful. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Can I kill that white-haired woman?"
Lian Qian shook her head.
"That person is still not someone you can defeat. However, you should be able to kill the rest."
Yi Xian slightly nodded. King Human's last attack should have injured that woman.
"I don't know if she will continue to attack me,"
Lian Qian solemnly said.
"She shouldn't be the only expert in Deity's Templar. However, Deity's Templar only sent her now because their true experts aren't here. No matter what, you are still in a bad situation."
Yi Xian solemnly said, "That woman is different from the other experts in Deity's Templar. I have to return to Tianjiang City first."
After saying that, he stood up and was about to leave.
At this moment, Xueqi and the Great Elder of Dao faction suddenly appeared in front of him. The Great Elder glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. "This chapter is not finished. Please continue." Xueqi looked at Yi Xian. "I will return to Tianjiang City with you."
"No,"
the Great Elder hurriedly said. "Xueqi, the current you." Xueqi looked at the Great Elder. "That is my responsibility. I can't let him bear it for me all the time." The Great Elder was a little anxious. "Xueqi, Deity's Templar is powerful now. We can't fight them at all. If you return to Tianjiang City with him now, you will undoubtedly die. You are the hope of our human race. We can't let anything happen to you." Xueqi was expressionless. "I am not King Human, nor am I from Dao faction. I have my own responsibility." After saying that, she looked at Yi Xian.
"Let's go."
Yi Xian nodded. He naturally welcomed Xueqi back. With Xueqi back, he would be under a lot less pressure.
The two were about to leave when the Great Elder suddenly stood in front of them.
The Great Elder solemnly said, "Xueqi, your life concerns the lives of millions of humans. You can't take this risk."
"You," Yi Xian suddenly said. "Great Elder, I don't like what you said."
"Xueqi is my friend. I also want her to be well. However, I don't want her to run away. Of course, if she really can't come back, I, Yi Xian, will definitely take on the responsibility of protecting God Nation." The Great Elder suddenly said angrily, "Yi Xian, do you know what her life concerns? Her life is not the same as yours, you." Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. The Great Elder's expression changed. He punched with his right hand. Boom! With a loud explosion, the Great Elder was pushed back hundreds of feet by Yi Xian's sword. Not only that, one of his palms was cut off by Yi Xian. The Great Elder was shocked and angry. "Yi Xian, you!" Yi Xian coldly looked at the Great Elder. "Great Elder, I don't like what you just said. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Xueqi is my friend. She has her own choice. She is not a tool of your Taoist faction. Xueqi wants to go back with me. If your Taoist faction tries to stop her, I will kill all of you. Anyway, I already have many enemies. I am not afraid of one or two more." After saying that, he looked at Xueqi. "Let's go." Xueqi nodded. She looked at the Great Elder. The Taoist faction wants him and the temple to both suffer heavy losses. However, I don't want that. He is my friend. Moreover, God Nation is my country. I have the responsibility to protect it. After saying that, she looked at Yi Xian. "Let's go." Yi Xian nodded and the two of them left. The Great Elder wanted to say something. At that moment, an old man suddenly appeared beside him. Seeing the old man, the Great Elder's expression changed. He quickly bowed. "Exalted Sovereign Li." Exalted Sovereign Li said softly, "Don't stop her. If you do, this little girl will leave our Taoist faction." The Great Elder said in a low voice, "But now, we are unable to fight the temple head-on. The best choice is to let Yi Xian fight it head-on, and then we will come out and reap the benefits." Exalted Sovereign Li said indifferently, "That is not impossible. However, you have forgotten where this little girl came from. And you have forgotten her relationship with Yi Xian." The Great Elder fell silent for a moment, and then he said, "What should we do now?" Exalted Sovereign Li said softly, "Wait. Wait." The Great Elder frowned slightly. He was about to say something when the space in front of him suddenly trembled.
The great elder fell silent for a moment, and then he looked at exalted Sovereign Li. The temple has made a move. P.S. Today is the 1st. Everyone should have a lot of guaranteed monthly tickets. Hee hee, all of you know. End of this chapter. Chapter 740. Tianjiang City. On this day, many experts suddenly appeared in the sky above Tianjiang City. They were all experts from the Temple of Gods. All the experts from the northern region had gathered in Tianjiang City, including the experts from the Shenyuan family, the Wu clan, and the Sword Martial School. Now they were tied to Yi Xian. It could be said that they were bound together for good or bad. Looking at the experts from the deities Templar, everyone in the city wore a solemn expression. There were only 30 experts from the Temple of Gods in the sky above Tianjiang City. However, among them, the weakest was at the Feng Ascension realm. There were 6 half-step unknown realm experts, and the spear-wielding old man's realm was unknown. The old man stood at the front. Although his hair was white, he stood straight like a javelin. An expert from the Temple of Gods. Behind the spear-wielding old man, the experts from the Temple of Gods also had strong auras. Standing in the air, the 3 of them gave off a suffocating pressure. Compared to the Temple of Gods, the northern region was relatively weak, but not too weak. With the addition of the Shenyuan family and other ancient forces, the northern region's strength was also very strong. It should be noted that the Shenyuan family, the Sword Martial School, the Wu clan, and the Immortal Sword Sect, these ancient forces all had strong foundations. They had more than 20 Feng Ascension experts in total, and only 4 half-step unknown realm experts. As for the northern region, there were only a few Feng Ascension experts. However, everyone knew that the strongest combat force in the northern region was Yi Xian. Yi Xian. One of them was equivalent to several of them. On the other side, the Master of Mysterious Yellow had also arrived, but she was hiding in the dark. Beside the Master of Mysterious Yellow was Elder Yang. Elder Yang looked at the experts from the Temple of Gods in the distance and said softly, "It seems that the Temple of Gods is getting serious." The Master of Mysterious Yellow smiled slightly. In fact, they should have done this long ago. Now, it may not be too late, but they will definitely pay a higher price than before. Elder Yang nodded. That guy. I guess he has become much stronger now. Yi Xian. This was a man who was becoming stronger every day. Elder Yang suddenly asked, "Your Majesty, are we going to make a move this time?" The Master of Mysterious Yellow nodded. Go. Elder Yang hesitated for a moment before he said, "Completely fall out with the Divine Hall?" The Master of Mysterious Yellow said softly, "If we don't act now, we might not have the chance to do so in the future. There's nothing wrong with enduring patiently, but if you endure patiently your entire life and don't know how to grasp opportunities, then you're really a tortoise." As she spoke, she looked at the Sky Dome realm and said softly, "Go and make preparations." Elder Yang nodded slightly and left quietly. In the distant sky, the spear-wielding elder from the temple looked down coldly. When he saw the lineup of northern experts, his face turned extremely cold. Regret. At this moment, he was filled with regret. Yi Xian had unknowingly developed to this extent. They should have gotten rid of Yi Xian long ago. Fortunately, it wasn't too late. The spear-wielding elder looked down. Is Yi Xian around? Meanwhile, Anlancio suddenly appeared in front of the old man, and she gazed at him. He's not here. The spear-wielding old man nodded slightly. Then wait for him. Anlancio asked, "You're not going to make a move?" The spear-wielding elder glanced at Anlancio. If he's not here, what's the point of making a move? At this time, Lian Wanli appeared beside Anlancio, and she smiled. If he's not here, isn't it better for you to make a move? The spear-wielding elder glanced at Lian Wanli, but didn't speak. Lian Wanli looked at Anlancio. What should we do now? Anlancio said. He'll be back soon. Lian Wanli nodded slightly. Anlancio said softly, have all the experts below Emperor Realm withdraw. No, have everyone withdraw. Lian Wanli nodded, turned around, and left. Soon, the people in Tianjiang City began to withdraw. If they fought later, the entire city would probably disappear. The temple experts didn't make a move, and they allowed those people to withdraw. At this time, the spear-wielding elder and the others suddenly turned around. In the distant horizon, 2 sword lights shot over, and soon, the sword lights landed in front of them. When the sword lights dispersed, the newcomers were Yi Xian and Xueqi. Xueqi. Seeing Xueqi, the countless divine kingdom powerhouses below immediately became excited. Xueqi. Even though she'd been gone for a long time, her status in the hearts of all the experts was still extremely high. It could be said that Xueqi had once been the spiritual pillar of the divine nation. Of course, they were extremely respectful towards Yi Xian as well. Because it was Yi Xian who'd brought them to Sky-Earth World and helped them get through their most difficult times. So, it didn't matter if Yi Xian was the Divine Lord or Xueqi was the Divine Lord. The spear-wielding elder's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Yi Xian. "You've become stronger again." Yi Xian glanced down and said, "Shall we go somewhere else?" He didn't want to fight here because if he did, then the entire city would collapse. The spear-wielding elder nodded. "As you wish. Come with me." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yi Xian gazed at the experts of the Shenyuan clan and said, "Are all of you willing to come with me?" Those experts were slightly stunned. In the next moment, the Shenyuan clan's ancestor nodded, and then he led the experts of the Shenyuan clan over to stand behind Yi Xian. The others arrived behind Yi Xian as well when they saw this. All of them were the strongest experts of the Northern Territory. Yi Xian turned around to gaze at the nearby Master of Heaven. The Master of Heaven grinned. "Go ahead, King Yi. I won't disappoint King Yi." Yi Xian nodded. "I hope so." As soon as he finished speaking, he and Xueqi led the others along and vanished into the horizon. And Lanxiu, Lian Wanli, and Mo Xie were amongst them as well. Their strengths were sufficient to surmount realms of cultivation to do battle. Moreover, this battle was of utmost importance. So, all 3 of them had chosen to follow Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't refuse, and it didn't take long for their group to arrive above the clouds and enter an unknown expanse of the starry sky. A battle in the starry sky. The starry sky was extremely vast, and it was repaired by the laws. It was most suitable for battles. The old man glanced at Yi Xian's group, and then his gaze descended onto Yi Xian in the end. "Shall we fight one-on-one?" Yi Xian smiled, and then he gazed at Xueqi. "Do you want to do it or should I?" Xueqi thought for a moment and said, "I'll do it. How long will it take for you to deal with those people behind him?" Yi Xian glanced at the people behind the old man, and then he said, "One for each. One for each." The expressions of the people behind the old man instantly turned gloomy when they heard Yi Xian. "One for each? Is there something wrong with Yi Xian's head?" Xueqi fell silent for a moment before he said, "All right. I'll fight the strongest one, and you go fight the weaklings." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around to gaze at the experts of the Shenyuan clan and the other powers. "All of you act according to the opportunity." As soon as she finished speaking, she charged towards the old man. OM. A sword howl reverberated through the sky. At the instant that Xueqi charged forward, the old man suddenly took a step forward. At the same time, his spear stabbed against that ray of light. Bang! In an instant, the entire starry sky trembled violently while the space in an area of over 100 kilometers cracked apart. Meanwhile, Xueqi had appeared in front of the old man without anyone noticing, and she stabbed her sword towards the old man's throat. This attack was swift like a bolt of lightning. The old man's reaction was extremely swift, and his spear had stabbed towards her stomach at the instant that Xueqi attacked. The spear was longer than the sword, and it was even faster. Xueqi had no choice but to stop, and she slashed down. Bang! The spear shook violently, and then it changed direction and brushed past Xueqi's shoulder. Meanwhile, a ray of light shot towards the center of the old man's forehead. Hiss! The sword pierced through thin air. Xueqi's eyes narrowed slightly as she retreated explosively by 300 m. As soon as she did, the space where she stood suddenly collapsed. The old man's spear had missed, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes as he gazed at Xueqi. "I always thought that Yi Xian was the most monstrous genius. So it turns out that there's someone even more monstrous than him. As expected of someone with the Mortal King destiny." Xueqi didn't speak, and she just twisted her wrist slightly. In the next moment, an expanse of light surged forward. At practically the exact same moment, The old man suddenly charged forward, and in an instant, countless spear images surged out. Yi Xian withdrew his gaze, and he grinned as he gazed at the 29 Ascension Realm experts in the distance. Transform. Bang. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.